call to order the annual FY23 budget hearing for the city of Valdosta. I believe most of the evening is going to be presented to us by Mark Barber, our fantastic city manager. Mark, you want to start on time? We'll start with a prayer that I believe Ms. Cody would love to lead us in, and then we'll turn and pledge the flag. Please rise.
Father God, we come to you this afternoon saying, every heart is heavy. We come to you saying we have in sequence, mothers, fathers, loved ones that hurt in Texas. Father God, it's time for change, and it starts within our home. It's time for us to reach out and stop this hatred. It's time for us to show fellowship with one another. For us to send prayers up to every mother that feels this over and over and over again each time a child is hurt. And for that, we just give this prayer to you, God. We ask you again to lift Texas up, lift the leaders up in Texas, lift the President of the United States up, come down here locally, lift our mayor up, every department, every councilman, everyone in Valdosta should be feeling something this day. This has been a gloomy day for myself, and I know for so many others. That God, we ask you for guidance. We ask you for understanding. We ask you to just touch us in a very special way. Because, Father God, we all are hurting. We are moaning. We don't know what to say, what to think, or what to do. We all have turned and tossed all night long. But God, we ask you to come in this budget meeting. Anything is not of you, God, stop it. Stop it this second. And we ask you to cover every child in the world that you created, every parent, everyone that has anything to do with this United States of America. Touch their hearts, Jesus. At this time, only you can do it. And we ask these blessings in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You connected? Did you connect it in?
Welcome, Council. Welcome, Councilman Carroll. I didn't think he was going to make it. I imagine some land speed records were broken. No, not in the presence of the chief.
No.
We now consider this meeting to be open, and again, we invite our city manager, Mark Barber, up to lead us. Mark? Do you want me to recognize anybody in there? I believe I see one. Anybody in the general public? Anybody from the general public that wants to speak prior to the meeting or throughout the meeting as well? No? No. I don't believe so. Thank you. You're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, council members. We'll try to be brief with this. We've done a good job the last couple of years. If you remember, this used to be maybe a two and a half night event. We've got it down now to an evening, so we'll be brief. Before I get started, though, I was remiss last year because we were so eager to get out. I want to make sure I take the time at the beginning of the presentation to thank Amy Hall and Carolyn Burgess for their tremendous work they do on this budget every single year. And of course, we add Chuck Dinkins into that mix as well, but they do a tremendous job because, as you know, this process begins in December or a little bit earlier sometimes. So Amy and Carolyn do a wonderful job on this. We continue to win the award. If you noticed the gentleman the other night that presented the audit, he mentioned the financial statements winning national awards, so does our budget. And we've done that for quite a while now. And again, Amy and Carolyn deserve the credit, so great job, ladies. And I definitely can't leave our department heads. They do a wonderful job working with Amy and Carolyn, and as we go through some of these slides, you'll see some of the things that we had to work with them on this year as we begin the budget process. So with that, we'll begin. All right. Well, I always like to begin with some of the budget highlights, and they haven't changed too much over the last couple of years, as you'll notice, because this is pretty much a continuation budget from last year. But the budget does include a salary increase for our career and part-time employees of 3.5% cost of living. The difference between this, last year was a 3%, so we bumped it up a little more, but we began the increase July 1st as opposed to January 1st. So our employees just got a 3% cost of living this past January 2022. July 1st, they'll get a 3.5% beginning at that point in time. Of course, as I think we all know, that doesn't keep up with the pace of inflation right now, but we're trying our best to bridge that gap as we go each year. Our position chart has 657 positions in the budget throughout the city. This year we are going to ask for some additional positions we'll talk about as we get to to those particular areas. The first being a zoning technician, the second being a senior planner, the third being a community protection technician, a central lines crew leader, and an environmental services technician. We'll talk a little bit about that, but when we get to planning and zoning, you'll see this year we're introducing splitting the planning and zoning department. Usually a city our size has a planning area and a zoning area. And it used to be this way at the city. When Carmelo left, we did some consolidation and things back, so it's more efficient, it'll work better, it'll help some timeliness of responses and things like that, because there's so much happening right now with both of those. Some things aren't getting the attention they need on the planning side because it's so fast and furious on the zoning side. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and as we get there. Also, on the employee side of things, this budget does not require any increase in contributions to any benefit the city employee has right now. All premiums stay the same for health insurance, retirement, whatever the case may be. Nothing is going up in that area. Also, we continue to, one of our most popular benefits of the city is our medical clinic, and the city does continue to provide that for active employees, their dependents, and retirees that chose to stay on with us. So it's a great benefit. Also, all the major funds, general fund, sanitation, water, sewer, are all balanced. The state of Georgia says you're balanced if you take your revenues you expect to receive in the next 12 months and you subtract your expenses and you add your fund balance. That's what the state considers balanced. We're a little more stringent here on ourselves internally. We say we're only balanced without using the fund balance. We're balanced with the revenues expected the next 12 months minus those expenditures. So we balanced according to our internal financial policies as well as the state policies. Again, we're presenting this budget with no anticipated millage rate increase, but as we've talked over the years, the digest must grow a sufficient amount for that to maintain it. But as you'll see on the next slide, we don't have that information at the time we're preparing this budget, so it's very difficult to know that. So if the digest grows the adequate amount, then there will not be any tax increase. So we've not built that in. We've just built in a growth in the revenue, but not a tax increase. Yes?
Well, obviously, the question asked at this stage is, what percentage increase in the digest are you anticipating?
We're always shooting for 2.5%, and we've not hit it in the last few years. Because if you remember, the vehicle tax is part of that total digest, and it's steadily going downward as folks are buying new cars and the TVA tax takes place. So we've got that against us right off the bat with the declining tax base with vehicles. But we need a growth of about 2.5% as we spoke before. It's really not the residential side that needs to grow to provide that. It's healthy, but we need the industrial, commercial side, that's where the growth in the digest comes from, not from residential. Also, there's no general obligation debt in this fund. We've been without geo debt for quite a while, and that's kind of been a goal of mine and Chuck's over the years, is to keep the city out of general obligation debt. This is where you pledge the tax base of the city, and once you do it, and it's a 20-year deal, then you're kind of stuck there for 20 years. So unless it's a special project that needs to, we really try to stay from geo debt if possible. The general fund balance, for a while was reducing, but as the gentleman from Alden and Jenkins spoke the other night, it has increased. We started that increase a few years back. We have increased the millage rate slightly 2 times to achieve that, to start slowly building that back. But as he did speak the other night, a lot of the big jump for this year is the additional funding we got from CARES the previous year and ARPA this year. So as we start spending some of that, you'll start seeing that shift down a little bit, but we're still in that growth pattern we need to be in. Also, this continues, in 2013 we did a water rate sufficiency study. We're still under that, so that 5% for consumption and 5% for fixed costs is still in effect for this, which overall, usually by the time it goes into effect, is a 3% increase in water sewer income. So that's still in effect, and we will be probably next year doing another one of these rate studies just to make sure we're continue to be in line with where we need to be. All right, we talked about the departments earlier. All departments worked with us from what they originally turned in. Every department had to cut. We had to cut about $3.5–4 million, if I remember correctly, to get this in line so we could present to you guys. They were willing, I don't say they were eager to do so, but they were willing to do so. So I certainly appreciate that. And of course, one of the biggest challenges, more so this year than last year, is just the economy we're in now. All of our projects are tripling in cost as I've come to you and asked for additional money for different projects. So we're no different from everybody else. It's affecting us, and it's a little scary, to be honest with you. Even though the collections, you'll see some of this in here, SPLOST collections are up, sales tax collections are up, but they're not maintaining the rate at which inflation is. So we're really backwards, even though you're going to see more collections. The cost of things are eating that savings up very quickly. And one of the things that's a good benefit here at the city is our retirement plan. Because one of the things here, if you work here 10 years, you're going to get some kind of guaranteed monthly benefit from the city. So right now we contribute 19% of your gross pay into this retirement plan. We need to be contributing 30%. Our funds suffered greatly back in 2009, 2010 with that recession, because as you know, we're in the GMA pool. We're the largest person in the pool, so when investments were hit, it affected us more, and we have not recovered yet. We're still under a plan with GMA where we're meeting the minimum requirements from the state, so we're not reported of being in non-compliance, but we've got a long way to go on getting that fund back to where it needs to be. So right now we're doing 19, and GMA's agreed to let us do that for 2 more years, and then we're going to hit that 29–30% mark. And so you can imagine when you apply that amount to our total payroll at the city, it's going to be considerable. So that's just a few of the challenges that we're facing, some of the highlights of it as well. Any questions on anything I've talked about thus far? All right, well then we'll start with the numbers. And we won't spend a lot of time on this. This is our total city financial plan. Every fund we have is including in this. Some are individual, some have been consolidated because they're smaller funds. But let's start over on the left side where it says total combined. Then it says revenues, taxes. Those taxes are the property taxes, the local option sales tax, the special purpose local option sales tax. That's what's in that category there. Locally generated non-tax revenues, those are your charges for services. And you see the majority of that's over in our enterprise funds. That's where we charge folks for utilities, sanitation, things of that nature is what you'll find in that column. Revenues from other governments, those are grants and things of that nature. Then we talk about this a little bit every year. Capital contributed to fund, that usually has to do with our water sewer fund where things are purchased through SPLOST funding as an approved project, but it's water sewer owns it, so it's considered a revenue item back to the back to the water sewer fund. And the receipts from other funds of the city, we've talked about that over the years. Those are the operating transfers between city funds. One example would be customer service bills for utilities, sanitation, and actually everybody in the city. So if we didn't have that customer service department here, we would have to third-party that out and pay somebody for that service. So the operating transfer, so we get the full cost, when we look at the full cost of those type of departments, there's an operating transfer back to the general fund or to the appropriate fund for that department. Some of those are just some transfers that we do, let's say, from example, Department of Labor building that we rent to the state. Sometimes it builds up a fund balance in there that's really not necessary, so that gets transferred to the general fund from time to time. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the different areas there are. The expenses, operating expenditures, of course, you know, that is salaries and supplies for the most part. 70% of the expenditure budget is compensation to cities. 30% pretty much is the supplies and that we need to operate the funds. Capital expenditures, we've got $40.7 million in capital expenditures that we'll spend a lot of time on this evening. We've got debt service, and really for a budget of this size, we only have debt service payments of $1.5 million. We're really doing good. We're really attacking and being aggressive, bringing that debt back down. So that kind of gives you an idea of what fits in those categories. So for FY23, total sources is $144,351,468. Total uses is $135,336,382, for an excess of sources over uses of slightly over $9 million. Then you see the total city fund balance would then go to $217,269,092. That's just the combined total. Then general fund, we won't spend a lot of time here because we'll go through that very extensively in just a second. But we've got sources, total sources of 45.9, total uses of 45.7, which will give us an excess of $187,000. Special revenue funds, that next column we're moving to the right. That's where our accommodations tax fund is, and that's where our newly created ARPA fund will be, as well as the transit fund. So this column here is a little larger than you've seen in the past because, again, we created the transit fund and an ARPA fund. And as we get to those, we'll talk a little bit more in detail, but we wanted those totally separated from the general fund or from any other fund. So let's say, for example, the ARPA fund. That $16 million we're going to get will all be recorded there. Everything we pay out will be in that fund. That way, in the future, if we put it, say, in the general fund as an expense in a revenue, future year it gets skewed. So next year, you know, revenue will look down when it's really not. It was just reimbursed through ARPA. So everything in that ARPA fund will be paid out of that fund. Separate bank account, separate fund. So everything will be right there consolidated for folks who want to see any of that type of information. Capital projects funds, that's our SPLOST and our LMIG from DOT that you see there. That totals $24.2 million. Our enterprise areas, largest of those are utilities, sanitation, Department of Labor, Mathis Auditorium. Some of those smaller ones have been consolidated. We're looking for revenue of 47.8 from that. Then we have our internal service funds, which is our group insurance and our motor pool funds, and we're expecting 16.7 from there. But we'll talk a little bit more in detail as we go through there. Anybody have any questions on this, the total consolidated financial plan for next year? All right. All right, the 2023 budget that we're proposing represents a revenue increase of $16.8 million. General fund increased to $1.8 million, special revenue slightly over $5 million, and that's mainly because of the ARPA funding going in there, as we said. Some transit as well in there that hadn't been there in the past. Capital funds, $1,124,000. Enterprise areas, 8.2. Again, the largest being of that is that contributed capital I just talked about. That's really not a revenue. It's for Chuck and the accounting folks for booking that contributed capital. That's what that is. Internal service, 544. And our permanent fund, which is our cemetery trust funds, is negative there because our investments, as we spoke earlier, are not doing well anywhere that we have them. So, we've got a perpetual fund that we have invested out there so we can take care of the cemetery and infinitely, and we just lost a little money on the revenue. Any questions on that? All right. On the expenditure side, our total operating expenditures increased 4.4%. Majority of that is what I just told you. July 1st, our employees are going to get a 3.5% cost of living. So you can kind of see based on that, because that 3.5% affects the total compensation. It's just not the salary. Our retirement contribution has to go up. All of those type of things, our FICA contribution is increased. So it's just not to the salary, it's that total compensation. So when I say 3.5%, that's just to the salary. That's not the percent of the total compensation that will happen for employees. So, and I just make that point because, again, our operating expenditures only increased 4.4% citywide. So that's when I say it's a continuation budget, and the operating section is pretty much a continuation of the budget. Capital expenditures increased 29.3%. That's what we want to see. The last couple of years we spent more of our evening discussing capital projects as opposed to operating, because the capital expenditures where the folks are seeing what we're doing, the paving of roads, the sidewalks, drainage issues, utility issues, things of that nature. So tonight will be no different. I'll spend the majority of the time up here with you guys talking about capital as opposed to operational. And again, we talked about debt service, decreased 4%, which is very, very good for us to be able to say that. All right. Now we're going to start with the capital area. And this first slide you'll see here, this shows you all of the different funding sources we have for capital. Starting far left corner, we got current revenues. Those are just revenues that are generated in a fund, whether it be general fund, water, sewer, sanitation. So you can see there's $10.1 million there. Leases, that's the police department. That's some of the in-car computer leases that we have with them. We have SPLOST 7. We still got $1.5 million holding on to SPLOST 7 for Jerry Jones project, and that's for utility relocations. We're to that point now, so next year, hopefully, SPLOST 7 fund will be shut down, and you'll just see SPLOST 8 here, but that's what you see there. Then SPLOST 8, you can see $15.8 million. T-SPLOST, $9.5 million. GDOT, that's $650. That's what you just approved a few meetings back for the LMIG for upcoming year. That's their contribution. ARPA grant, $1,935,000, and that it represents what we got from the state of Georgia for the water plant. We're looking at that to be the property acquisition is what that number is, what we're looking at. And of course, the ARPA we've got in there for $1,147,000, and as we get to that fund, it's got to be accounted for a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that. But those are all the different fundings for capital. So we're looking at almost $40.9 million for capital projects in a 12-month period. And again, it's a little bit scary because of the economy, the situation we're in. We've already experienced delays because we can't get the material. And then, of course, as you guys really know, the price of things are just skyrocketing, and it's changing how we're having to look at some of our projects. All right. All right, here is just the capital percents by our different areas. 47% is engineering, and that's because they do the majority of the SPLOST projects. 1% police, 0.4% fire department, public works 0.9%, water and sewer, as you'd expect, is 43% as we continue to improve and enhance our infrastructure in the ground, and vehicles is at 7.5% of capital spending out of that 40 million I just spoke of. Okay, we've already talked about this. SPLOST 7 is the Jerry Jones relocation of utilities. That was an expense that we agreed to. If you remember, right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation were the two areas that we agreed upon that the city would financially contribute to. So we're close right there. The right-of-ways have been purchased, and now we're to this point here. So this should not be here next year. We're still on SPLOST 8. I won't read all of those unless you want me to, but you can see the projects that we're looking at. The largest on here right now on this slide is the Dogwood area, the land acquisition, construction, and contingency. That's $1,950,000. So that's the biggest area. I'd be happy to any questions that you might have on this these areas.
On the Dogwood, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
The residents, I know Attorney Tanner was saying that he was waiting on some of the residents out of time to get back with him. Are they replying back to him?
It's slow. It's slow. We're gonna re-energize that a little bit, but you're right. We've been really having a kind of a slow. We had that good kickoff meeting, and everybody's getting excited. Then the interest kind of waned a little bit, but we'll get that back going again. And I think, as you said, that's one of the projects that was going to be a lot less than $1,950,000, but because of what we just talked about earlier, it's the longer we wait, the more that price is going up. Okay, still in SPLOST 8, there's the police. That's still what's left. They have used some of their SPLOST 8 funding, but this is where we still are with the police department. Fire department, I think twice this year, has brought these scuba air packs to you at $127,000. I think this is down to the last purchase for Chief Boutwell out of SPLOST 8. And parks, we just had, what we do, we take what we budgeted for parks and divide it by 12. So that was the $2 million, not the 1.5 is not in there for our District 5 park, but the $2 million that we did for all the parks in the city for maintenance, some of the things that we've done thus far. And if you hadn't seen Smith Park, please go by. We finally got the siding down. We got the landscaping done. We haven't got the flowers in, but we got the pine strung on trees. That middle ugly section is fixed nice now, and it really, really looks good. So those are the kind of things we do out of that $333,000. And sometimes a little more because we do have savings. So that's what that represents. Also, that electrical installation, these are going to be some things that we're doing for downtown, as well as Olympic Park, to do some different lighting type of things where we didn't have the electric out there to do such things. And with the amphitheater, where it's going to be, we need that adjacent parking lot to have some pizzazz to it. So that's what this is all about here.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
Will that include power for the food trucks when we do it?
Yes, that's the idea for it. That's exactly right. Because they're not going to be in the interior of the amphitheater park, and we want them away from it. And we don't really want them using their generators because they're noisy. So if we're going to say you got to be electric, we wanted to give them that service so they could do so. All right, now on water sewer, they always have a ton of projects. The biggest thing being we'll continue with our EPD requirements, which we're doing very well on that. We're keeping up with that. As a matter of fact, we're a little bit ahead in some areas of where we should be with EPD. But you see, this is the normal thing that you normally see with them, with utilities. You see the bond principle as we continue to make those bond payments on the debt that we've entered to get the system to where it is now. All right? That's SPLOST 8. Was there any questions on SPLOST 8?
In the previous slide, I didn't see a line item for smooth top manhole cover.
It's called something else.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's that ground penetrating radar equipment.
Oh, okay.
So when they see a little white car about this big come, they know to sink down so you can go over.
Yeah. Just that few.
But there's going to be there will be a crew leader position when I talked about that. We'll kind of be over that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind as we talk about that crew leader position.
All right.
All right, T-SPLOST. T-SPLOST, we're on our second tier of projects. Here are the projects. If you remember, these are all really funded by DOT, but as we've discussed in the past, we fought hard with, I don't say fought, but we discussed a lot with DOT trying to let some local people get some of these contracts. And we just weren't successful. So the smaller intersection improvements, we bid out locally. And so 3 of those we bid out, and they're in progress some way, contingency or not contingency, design or begin construction somewhere in there. We will be reimbursed from the DOT for those projects. As you mean, all the other ones, there's no cash inflow or outflow for us. But these projects we chose to do in-house, we will get reimbursed. So they're way ahead of collections, is my understanding. And as we remember, the tax sunsets in 10 years or whenever they reach that total goal for our region of collection. So again, that's what's scary. It's easy to get to that revenue collection because everybody's paying more for everything, therefore you pay more sales tax. But when that ends, and the price of materials are going to keep going this way, and we're stuck here. So that's the world we're going to be working in here for a little bit.
So to make sure I understand this correct, because I do want to understand the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to pay for this, and then DOT going to refund us back.
Yes, ma'am. Just so we could get some local folks, some engineering folks, some concrete folks involved, and get a little piece of this T-SPLOST. And but all the other large projects, Tier 3, that will be DOT will handle all of that. But that's absolutely right. Okay, and here's the ELMI grant we talked about earlier. This is the city's portion of that. And if you remember what we do now, when T-SPLOST passed, if you were a community that passed T-SPLOST, rather than the normal 30% local match, you went to a 10% local match. Well, we've never followed. We still continue to do 30 to 35% of that we add to that. So we wanted to kind of keep that going because we hear about our roads, and we're trying to develop some new ways to speed that process up. So we've kept 30 to 35% to the match that GDOT gives us, which usually winds up to be $1.3 million, somewhere in that area. And we've already talked about this. This is the ARPA grant we got through the state for the new water plant. We got a little over $12 million, but next year that's just to purchase the land, hopefully, and then we'll and we're getting closer with that. We're not where we want to be yet. Okay, and this is the next is the I believe, Amy, if I'm not mistaken, these are just the capital items on ARPA. Then we get to ARPA, we'll talk about everything. Okay, all right. So these are just the things that we know probably next year we'll do, some of the easier projects. Now you'll see there's not the small business grant nor nonprofit because we feel we might do that in this fiscal year. So that's not on there. But these are all the things that you agreed out of that $1.3 million, if you remember, for city projects such as remodeling of City Hall, fire stations, some of those things. That's what you're going to see mostly on here because we were fairly certain that that would happen in the next year. But if more happens, it's okay. If that check comes in May, June like it's supposed to, we'll have all of our money. So really it's not going to matter. This is going to be a fund that we're going to just maybe have to amend as we go since we're not sure. Let's say, for example, the Griffin Street project. We normally don't budget grants. And when you get to bottom line, it's kind of a grant from DCA. So you're not going to see it in here as a budgeted expense. The revenue's going to be here for you, but the expense is not, because if the developer doesn't get that project, if he doesn't win the project, just like a grant, we won't get that. I mean, I'm still hoping to purchase the property, but the rest of it won't be there. So like I said, this is going to be as we go, as we get things ready to spend. And again, even if, let's say, we don't get everything out of the small business this year, we're still going to be okay next year, because again, all the revenue is going to be recognized in this year we're in. Okay? Any questions on that? You'll see it might make a little more sense when we get to this statement. I don't know if it is or not, but it's kind of an odd one.
I hate to keep asking questions,
Sure.
sir.
No, that's what I want you to do.
On the flooring replacement, where's that going to be? Here or?
Upstairs. Yeah, here and some upstairs. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And of course, the largest one we have on there now is $500,000 for this majority of this room, so we can get you guys spread out a little bit more and make it a little better for our audience members to participate. Okay?
And when will
Yes.
they start on that?
We haven't done anything.
Done the phase?
I have had somebody just come to give us a preliminary look, just kind of give me a number. That's with $500,000. But until we approve the budget, that's as far as we went. I didn't want to be presumptuous and think we would approve it, but that's where the $500,000 estimate came from.
And can I jump back 2 or 3 slides? I mean, you don't
Yep.
have to go back, just a question. The replacing of the roof at Mathis,
Yeah, we'll get, well,
we're going to get to all that?
yeah, but again, it's in there.
It's in there?
It's in there because whatever might happen, we wanted it in there for your attention, but it's over $1 million. We definitely don't want to do that, but it's in here in case we have to. So we just want to be prepared.
Is in this one what you're doing
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Right now, it's just one.
So that's, never mind.
Go ahead.
I mean, I was trying to keep up with it. I thought we were gonna be using the one we get, but I'm gonna ask questions later.
Okay. You good, Ms. Vivian?
Yes, sir. I'm just falling apart.
I have those days as well. All right. Where am I at, Amy? And then these are just, now we're into, where I talked about capital that's funded through current revenues based on the particular fund. Now we're in the general fund. And we've got $15,000 still. It's kind of a leftover from what we've had a couple of years for some additional Christmas decorations. But that's why it's there. But it's in another budget as well, and it's much more than $15,000 for Christmas decorations for the amphitheater part. But that's just kind of a leftover amount we've had over the years. Again, we're still in general fund. Here is what we talked about earlier. This is the breakdown of the police department capital paid through general fund dollars. Same thing for the fire department. Urban redevelopment, that's Matt and his group. This is phase 3 of the historic resources survey. We've done phase 1, there's been phase 2. The state requires the 3rd phase. They kick in money, and that's our portion that they're telling us is the amount that we'll have to contribute for this survey. But the state usually kicks in the majority of that. All right, so that's everything in general fund that's going to be paid out of general fund. If you notice, a lot of times you'd have seen a lot more, but you saw all of that we would normally do out of general fund. You saw that on the ARPA listing. So that's the benefit of that. We're able to take those expenses out of general fund and put them in the ARPA fund. All right, now we're going to talk about user fees, and this specifically comes from the user fees from the water and sewer area. It's the same type of replacements, things of that nature that David comes forth with you, additions to the system, things we do to our distribution system. It's just pretty much the normal maintenance that we do on the systems. And that number comes to $5.2 million total. And what we try to do on this, as well as vehicles, which we'll talk about when we get there, is we try to look at the depreciation of the assets of the utilities fund, and any out of current revenues, we try to keep that amount very close to what we put out there in depreciation. That way we're maintaining things as we're replacing. So that's kind of a good systematic, methodical way of kind of gauging what you need to keep here in current revenues in that department. So, and they're very close to it. So that's kind of what we do with that. All right, in sanitation, there's going to be some forerunner. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What's the portable samplers? What's the portable samplers?
Oh, the 2 portable samplers, because we're doing so much more with sampling because of our EPD. It's just more samplers. They're easier for the guys to go get the samples out of the
So it's
river.
for testing?
Yeah, it's for testing, and they'll take it back to the lab, and the test's portable right there for you. And then floor renovation in Public Works, that's in that back hallway in the break room, is in need of a little attention. And here's where Councilman Gibbs was going to talk about the roof replacement auditorium. It's in here. We put it in here. We're hoping we do nothing with it. I mean, based on, the email I sent earlier, and we'll have a meeting about it, but, putting that kind of money into a building that we're going to sell just does not make sense. So, but we need it in here just in case. So it's here. And I would think that's probably a very low number now, because that number was got a while back, wasn't it, Richard? So it's probably a little higher now. Yes, Councilman.
So the selling of Mathis, can we add this amount as well to that budget for whatever we decide to do next?
No, because we're hoping we do nothing. We're just hoping this is a number on a piece of paper. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, it's not cash in the bank we have now. You know what I'm trying to say? It's if we had to.
Can we reallocate that amount along with Mathis? I mean, I know it's just an amount, but we're still budgeting for it.
Yeah, we budgeting for it, knowing we probably won't do it, but we needed it on here for you guys to see.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So we just placing this here to complete.
It's a placeholder.
As a placeholder, that's right. Just so
It's a placeholder.
if everything doesn't happen because we can't keep renting out Mathis like it is. It's to a point. HVAC, the roof. I mean, it's crumbling on one corner down by the helipad down there where the little flag is. I mean, it's falling apart right now. But if we keep renting, that was why we put it in here. We can't keep asking people to give us money with a deteriorated building. Is why it's in there. All right, then in our motor pool, our fleet area, they need a renovation of their restroom area, $18,000. So that's what that concludes there. That is what capital that's been requested out of the current revenue of a particular fund. No SPLOS, no anything like that. It's a current revenue. So next, capital is vehicles. And we'll start with the vehicles in the engineering department. They're requesting another F450 bucket truck that replaces a 2000 bucket truck, and a 350 crew cab that replaces a 2000 F350. So they're kind of scaling down a little bit. And again, they're 22 years old now. In the police department, if you remember police department, we always try to get the patrol guys rotated out. If you remember, this past year, I think we got 5 vehicles because of the supply situation. Chief Manahan did ask for more. I did cut it down to 10, but that still may go away again this year. So now we've missed 2 years of the rotation that we do out for police vehicles, for patrol vehicles. So at some point in time, when everything kind of meshes back together and gets back normal, we're going to have a catch-up period in that area. But there's 10 patrol cars, 3 for investigation, one for training and one for support services, and you can see the ages. I think the oldest one I see on there is a 2005, but the majority are 2006, 2007 patrol vehicles. And that the total is $600,000. Fire, we're looking at $2.2 million, and you notice there's 3 fire engines we're looking for on there. We've got 2 1998 pumpers that are for reserve, and if we're going to maintain our ISO of 1 and the next round, those 2 reserve pumpers cannot be there. So that's what we're asking for there. You see they're 1998. So again, then we're asking for a new engine, because for the new fire department that we've discussed up on the northern end of the districts, we're going to need a truck to put in there. So that's what that's about. So we normally wouldn't see 3, but we need replacing 2, and we need 1 new one. So that kind of takes the vehicle purchase a little more than you would normally see. Okay, Public Works.
They need these engines, so how old are the other ones?
1998. The 2 we're replacing, the 2 that got to be replaced were 1998.
Just put new paint on it.
So we replaced them, but I heard you say a new fire department.
Yeah.
We have not approved that yet.
Well,
Just getting the trucks in case we do approve that.
well, yeah, that's right. We've talked about it. We haven't found that we haven't negotiated with the property where we showed that retreat where we like it to be. We're still negotiating with those property owners, and so once y'all approve that, if you do approve that purchase of that property, then we're going to have to put a fire station. We need a fire truck to go in it. And remember, we're going to also put a little police area up there as well. So it's kind of the police and fire. It does, and that's the other thing too. It's 2 years out. However, Chief Boutwell has found a little easier way, quicker way to purchase. Like some folks might have ordered them and they decided for whatever the cost or whatever, they didn't want them. He does have a connection that can get those a little earlier, but most times it's 2 years out before we even get a fire truck once we place the order. Next is Public Works. There's $250,000 worth of what we consider vehicles, even though a lot of them you'll see are deck mowers, zero-turn mowers, and things of that nature. You'll see that backhoe new with a 5-year buyback. That's that good deal that we've worked out with John Deere, where they purchase it back from us, and usually that's $40,000 to $50,000 they pay us back for that backhoe. So we want to go ahead and keep that project going, and so that's Public Works. Vehicles and Sanitation is a dump truck for residential. These are the trucks that you see pulled to sway cars, and then another commercial roll-off truck for $240 for a total of $390 for the sanitation department. And then for the garage, for our fleet maintenance, another F-150 is replacing a 2000 Chevy, and it's with an 8-foot bed for our fleet folks. Water sewer, they need a light truck for meter reading, a Bobcat skidder loader, and a dump truck. And you can see the light truck is replacing a 1996 F-150, and the dump truck is replacing a 1995 F-800. So fairly old vehicles that are in pretty rough shape right now. And then for the stormwater division, another backhoe with John Deere, and it's that 5-year buyback that Greg's done a really good job of negotiating that with them. So they'll be buying ours back. And Amy, if I'm not mistaken, is that the net cost with the buyback? So normally it's about $115,000, $125,000 somewhere in there, and then they give us the credit buyback, so only it's costing us $79,000. So that's the benefit of that.
So they will have 2 now instead of 1?
Stormwater will have theirs, and then the other one was for utilities, I believe. So this is for stormwater. Let me see what that other one was for you, Miss Vivian.
Now, the reason I asked, I know at one time when they was digging over there on Woodlawn, they were saying that they needed a second one. That's why I was asking, would this be additional to the one they already have?
Well, in the past, we have had to share sometimes, but this will give stormwater theirs, utility theirs, sanitation theirs.
But they can come together and
Yeah,
solve a
if
problem.
one breaks and we can't get, then we've at least got something from another department that we can take to an emergency repair site. So, that gives us a little over $4 million of vehicle purchases. But keep in mind what I just talked about with the fire department. Those 3 fire trucks are $2.2 million. So if you back that out of the $4 million, we're requesting $1,847,750 for all the other vehicles in the city. And as I told you about the depreciation with the utilities, we do the same things with vehicles. As they rotate out, we're trying to show we're replacing at a systematic method, and that depreciation rate for motor pool right now is $1,860,801, and we're asking for $1,847,750 besides the fire trucks. That excuses a little bit.
So when we rotate out, do we sell them to someone else?
Yes,
Make a profit?
we sell them all on gov deals. We had some selling, Greg had some out there this past, maybe 2 weeks ago, and they were, some of our old police cars were out there selling for a little over $2,000, $2,500. We don't get that much, but we do recoup some.
And would that be shown that we got the monies back?
Yes, that's shown on our vehicle, our motor pool division, because it's the asset of the motor pool, so that revenue all goes back to motor pool, which then it's best for the whole city because they have to prorate their expense of the fund to everybody, so the more that we get in there, the less it's going to cost everybody for their vehicle services. So that's vehicles. Maybe we won't spend a lot of time there because that's the FY21. We're already well into that. Amy, then here's what you guys just approved. We just wanted to put it in there just so you remembered what we talked about. Okay. All right, that's capital. That's $40 million worth of capital, all the projects involved. And again, like Ms. Vivian, you may say, where's my Fry Street project? Well, it's already encumbered. We're just waiting for material and the mobilization. So we'll still be doing that, but it's already been encumbered in the previous budget. So if you didn't see something like that, that means we got it. It's ready. It's been encumbered. We're just waiting.
You were in my head.
I knew I was waiting for it. So that's where we are with a lot of those. You may not see it this year, but you know it's been encumbered, ready to go. All right. So now we'll start on the general fund. All right, we're going to start on the left-hand column again. That far left is the FY21 actual. This is what the gentleman from Alden and Jenkins, this was some of his presentation last week. The second column is what we adopted last year. That's the 2022 adopted. Then you see the next column is the 2022 estimate. That's what budgeting and accounting feel where we'll come in at June 30 of this year based on where we're at and then analyzing where we're currently at and budgeting for the rest of the, and taking into account the rest of the year to June 30. And then of course that final column, FY23, is where we've, what we're recommending. As you can see, we've got $45.9 million in revenue. The majority of that, there's no surprise, that's taxes. And then receipts from other funds is $6 million. We've talked about that earlier, but I'd be happy to talk about it any more if anybody has any more questions on it. Again, it's just pretty much the taxes, and we'll go into more detail so you can see exactly what taxes are going up or going down. On the operating expenditure side, you know, in 2021, we're at $40.4 million in operating expenditures. We're recommending in this budget 42.8. So again, as I keep saying, I hate to be redundant, but it's really a continuation budget when it comes to this. Capital expenditures you see, disbursements to other funds. For general fund and for all the funds, it's mostly our group insurance fund it doesn't cover itself. So at the end of the year, we have to, each department has to come with funding to make that fund whole. And you'll see when we get to that fund, it's quite a bit larger than last year. Again, we're not different from other places, whether private or public. Health insurance and the type of plan we offer employees is really expensive. So that leaves us 45.9 of sources, 45.7 of uses, and so we're looking at excess of $187,954. Remember last year we had excess of $26,815, so we've a little bit better this year, but that's for this size budget. That's still not a huge barrier for any type of other economic downturn. But it does get us to, if everything goes as planned, at the end of 2023, that would get us a fund balance of $10.6 million. All right?
That's good.
We're getting there. We are getting there. We really are. All right. General fund revenues, just to kind of give you an idea of the makeup of revenues for the general fund. I'm going to start on the right side with the larger numbers. Property taxes, 30%. Sales and use tax, 28%. Other taxes, 34%. License and permits, 1.5%. Intergovernmental is 3.4%. Charges for services in the general fund is not even 1%, which is normal because the general fund is not about making money. It's about getting your resources in, spending them all, and have a little reserve. Fines and forfeitures, 2%. You'll see a dramatic decrease in municipal court fines and forfeitures. And then, of course, we've always get some little miscellaneous money from here or there. That's 0.8%. All right, general fund expenditures. No surprise here, police and fire are at the top. Police is 40% of all general fund expenditures. Fire is 24%. Municipal court is right under 2%. Engineering is 10%. Human resources is 1.2. Public works 6.6. Zoning 1.2. Other admin 1.4. Finance 5.8. Admin 4.8, community development 1.8, and community protection 1.3. If you compare this with other municipalities and percents of where the money goes, this is pretty much in line with what you're going to see. Because a lot of times we do try to look at the admin side of things to make sure we're not too high, and we're pretty much right in line where we should be with admin, finance, and engineering type of departments. And I hate Mr. Vickers isn't here because he always loved this. Is his favorite slide he likes for me to show. This is a comparison of our two largest general fund revenue items, which are property taxes. This year 11.9, and local option sales tax was 11.2. You see that total is 23.172 million, and you see the police department budget 17.2 million, fire's 10.3 million for a total of 27.6. So you see the gap between 23.1 and 27.6, our two largest departments and our two largest revenue generator. There's about there's a considerable gap there, about a $4.47 million gap. That's got to be made up from somewhere.
That's every year.
So that's every year. That's every year. That's what to expect every year. Councilman Vickers just likes to show this graph.
Yeah, he does.
All right. This is we're still in general fund. Haven't left general fund yet. Still there. And this is kind of give you a breakdown of the classifications of expenses. As we talked about in years past, personal services is 67.3%. That includes the total compensation package that I was speaking of earlier. Usually 67 to 70%. If you're in that range on salaries, that's pretty much where everybody else is in our local government. Contractual services are 11%. Those are things like our Georgia Power bill, for all the street lighting, insurance, things of that nature fall in contractual. Supplies are just the supplies that's needed for the department. Travel and training, 1.8%. Other services and charges is 14%. And capital again, this is not the 40 million of capital, this is just the little capital that we saw that's funded by general fund is 0.3%.
Our travel went up because of gas prices.
We're usually right in there on travel, 182. And some of it's went up a little bit too, Councilwoman, because we're doing less Zoom meetings and going back to some traveling to meetings, so it's increased a little bit because of that. All right, local option sales tax, here's where we are. It's a good picture. It would be a better picture, again, as I spoke of earlier, if we weren't in the inflationary period we are now. That is a wonderful, we're heading in the right direction. But again, all of that positive increase is just gobbled up with inflation right now. I mean, very grateful for it, because I don't know if we were still back there at the 2014 levels, 2016 levels even, I don't know how we would balance the budget, to be quite honest with you. Because we certainly won't have enough fund balance to do that. But we're on an uprise there. But what we've got to be prepared for, like I said, if inflation, if it decreases, then we're going to receive less sales tax because prices are lower. Right now, this collection is so high because prices are so high, we're getting more from it because the prices are high. So, again, we're going to have to monitor this very closely. Do you have a question, Councilman?
Are we still on target to go into loss negotiations with the county in September, October?
I have not received notice. You know, you have to get notice from the county for that process to begin, because that's a county-wide tax. I don't know if the mayor has, but I've not received that notice as of yet. Councilman Gibbs, are you okay?
I was trying to adjust my chair and I hit the wrong button.
But they have to actually, Councilman, they have to June 30 to do that, so.
Yeah.
And usually it's been my experience in the past. The last two I've negotiated, last week, mid-June, we'll probably get some formal notice. So any questions on local option sales tax? All right. And just to give you an idea, just to refresh your memory right now, we get about 38.6%. Chuck, is that about 38.6% of what's collected here is what the last negotiation was, which we felt we were at 40. So it seems like each negotiation we go this way rather than that way. So, but that's what that represents, 38% of collections for Lowndes County. And I always give this little soapbox deal too. I do not trust the Department of Revenue with the state of Georgia. We don't know if we're getting our fair share or not, but they provide no reporting to help you confirm anything in that department. But we'll continue to work with the Department of Revenue and help them make sure that they're doing things correctly, because we still receive maybe once a quarter where they can't decide who they owe money to, so they just split it up and we get a deposit for that amount of money. So that's never good business. So can't trust them as long as they're doing things like that. All right, that next slide just kind of gives you a history of the fund balance. Where we started in 2013 was $2 million, a little over $2 million, and we're $10.5 million now. But don't forget, as we talked in the past, prior to that 2013 and probably in 2009, we had a $13 million fund balance. That's how quick it was gobbled up with the recession at that time. We went from $13 million within 3 years. You see, we got to 2. And then 2014, we got below 2, and that's where I was panicked. We were a little under 2 million. We're about 1.8 in 2014. So I just say this just to let you all know how quick this can go away. And we think we're presenting a budget to you that is very fair, very conservative, that will help to mitigate what's happening in our economy right now. But that this a little scary for us. All right. Here in general fund, we're still in general fund. Here's all the positions in general fund. So now we're going to go into, we're still in general fund. We're just going to talk about the revenues in a little more detail. So if you have any questions about those, this is just a summary of the classifications of revenue. Last year, the budget was 44.1. This year, we're at 45.9. But if you'll go on, Amy, we'll get more detail of that. Then here's the transfers in I'm talking about that we do from other departments back to the general fund. Again, some is because they provide a service, some is just like the Department of Labor building. As they build a fund balance that's really not needed there, so we push that over to the general fund. And you'll see on any financial, if you want to look at, because Ms. Vivian's becoming an expert on our financials now, you'll see if you see a transfer in this fund, you're going to see a transfer out of the same amount. So in the grand scheme of things, these really mean nothing. It's booking for Chuck because they wash out. The expense and that area, the transfer in and the transfer out, wash each other out. But we've got to show them because that's how we have to account for them. All right, taxes. We'll do a little bit more detail on taxes. Real property, Councilman Carroll, you see there's what we grew it by. We budget 11,697. 11,697, and now we're at 11,967. So just a little bit of growth and hope we get it.
That's reasonable.
And we don't, and let me just say this, we don't look at last year's budget to give you this year's budget. We look at the actual, what we actually collected. So this 11.9 isn't based on the budget last year. Because those type of items, you gotta look at what you actually came in at and then budget forward. So and that's pretty much how we look at most of these things. It's not last year's budget, it's where we're actually at and build from that. Franchise fees, $3,800,000 to $3,700,000. As we've talked about that in years, that is going down. Those are the fees for folks that use our right-of-ways for utility placements. But so many people are doing things other than, they're doing, again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but they do Hulu and Roku and all that stuff. So a lot of these utility companies, their revenues are down, and that's how we get this money. It's a 5% or 3% depending of their revenue. So as they're not selling as much, we're not getting as much. So I think we're going to continue as that technology world evolves. I think we're going to continue to see that move in a downward direction. Motor vehicle tax, motor vehicle title tax, the TAVT, that was that change they made in 2013, that you get your sales tax on the vehicle up front sent to you. Again, as we just discussed, folks aren't buying vehicles right now. So we trended that down based on, again, not last year's budget, but based on actual collections through probably March, right, Chuck? Yeah. March or April. So we try to stay right on it. So again, when I say we budget this conservatively, those are the type of budget techniques that we look at. A lot of cities, and I just kind of like to say this, a lot of cities take the budget and they say add 3% to it, no matter what. They don't take time to go through each area and look at it. So I want you guys to know we look at every item on here, and we just don't say add 3% of the budget. We look at it where we're actually at, and then change, make that recommendation based on where we are at that point in time. All right.
Barbara, I know you said.
Yes, ma'am.
We put down those lines for internet in all our different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Is that in here? Because we still haven't got, some areas have not got connected yet.
Right.
And with this bad weather in my area, we have no internet.
Right.
But the lines are down, but they're not connected.
Right.
Is that in here?
Those that are connected and they're making sales with are part of this number, yes, ma'am. But if they just got the lines and
just the little thing is sticking.
And they didn't pass, and they by the person that the little, kind of like us with water sewer. If we put a sewer line in front of your house and you don't tap on, it's costing us money every day. So, and the company then you're not paying us, so there's no revenue. Same thing with the cable company. They got the line there and you didn't hook on, there's no revenue.
They hook on to, they haven't completed it.
Right, but what I'm saying, but the ones that have, and they're making sales to, that have signed up with them, that is in here. That is in here.
talk to you one-on-one,
Gotcha,
because I'm still lost, but I'll talk to you one-on-one,
gotcha. Yeah.
because I want internet.
All right, we're still on taxes, and we've already talked about local option sales tax enough tonight. I think we're good with that. Business occupation tax continues to grow, but not to be a negative Nelly standing up here, but a lot of that growth is still because of ARPA funding and people getting business license to hope to qualify for some funding down the road. The majority lately have been that, but they still give us a fee and we'll take it, and so that's some of the increase that you see there. Insurance premium tax, that's just a tax that we get backwards. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, during the ARPA time, everybody was opening up a business. So they had to, this is their funds in here, when they came down and got those license and permits to open up their businesses. Okay, let's say for instance, they only had the business for X number of days. So next year, will we get funds off of that business again?
If they're still open, we will, because they have to renew for the next renewal year. If they're closed, we won't.
So we'll take a loss.
Well, they just won't pay that. They just won't pay us. That's correct. We won't get that because when you come in and sign up, we get we get all those administrative costs and those upfront costs from you, and then your payment then is based on your gross receipts and your profitability, and so we'll get that. And if you go out of business the next year or whatever, your business is no longer open, I guess is the better way to say it, we won't get that. That's exactly right.
I've just thrown all those ARPA businesses that came in.
Right.
We won't have them next year.
Yeah.
I said it. You didn't
Right.
say it.
Yeah. I would love to, and I hope we do, but we may not.
All right. Thank you.
Good question. So we're still on taxes here. I think we've hit the largest ones. The insurance premium tax I was speaking of earlier, that's a tax on insurance premiums around the state, and the state sends us a check. It's prorated based on a very long calculation, and that's just the part we get. That usually grows a little bit each year. Any questions on taxes before we leave? All right. License and permits. None of this is new. You've seen this each year. Alcohol beverage license. This is separate, Councilwoman, from the business side. This is where, a store that sells alcohol, this is what this is right here. Insurance company business, land disturbing, MPDES permitting, that's just things to do with earth moving and things like that through engineering. So not a big change in that area. Intergovernmental, this is where we get things from different governments. Airport security, if you remember in the past, that's a grant that we used to get that was about $48,000, and it dwindled down to $1,000. We feel it's going to start going upward again, so that's why you see the $18,000 in there. Then you see the airport, their reimbursement back to us for the security. Then we see the crash rescue. That's what all that's for. Right-of-way maintenance for the state. The state pays us to do. They don't pay us enough, let me add that, to maintain some of their right-of-ways, but it is a contribution, and you can see it's down a little bit from last year. So last year we had a little GMO money and some DOT money, and this year, that was just part of a grant we don't have this year. Our next biggest SRO for schools, $694,550. That's just a little different because we switch personnel around and they have a lower salary. And we do try to work with Dr. Kaysen and the group to keep that cost, fairly minimal and reasonable for them. So that's what intergovernmental is. Any questions on intergovernmental?
Centella being a private school, with our officers going out there, they're paying our officers.
We negotiate a contract for $100,000 a year with Centella, yes, ma'am. Okay, next area is just charges for services. Again, as I said earlier, just very minimal in the general fund. These are just things that, like the police department run copies or fingerprint, those kind of things that they get paid for. well, you can see it's really not, it's $130,000. It's just insufficient funds where somebody may give us a check that doesn't really go through. We do get paid a little bit of fees for folks that have garnishments or child support issues, and the state pays us a fee for processing that for them. So not a lot there, but we'll take every little bit we can to keep this balance. Next is fines and forfeitures. We talked about that earlier. We looked in that at some of that. We're looking at fines and forfeitures of $780,000, which probably, if you looked at this probably 3 years ago, it was about $1.3 million. But again, as we talk about every year, this is not here to be a revenue generator for the general fund. It's something we have to do for folks that, break the law, but it's not made for revenue generation. So we're to a point now, if you go back and when you look at their expenditures, the revenues they're creating now do not cover the cost of that total department any longer. But again, I just bring that a point in case anybody looks at it, that's not what it was ever meant for. So. And Judge Baker's doing a good job. He continued a lot of some of those alternative programs that Judge Bender has started and enhanced those. That's a lot of what's happening. We were doing alternative instead of the fines, and again, not supposed to make money from this.
Is it due to the fact, and I'm only asking this question, is it due to the fact that we don't have enough officers on duty patrolling and, like radar and ticketing and...
I wouldn't think so, Councilman, because...
you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
that's why it's kind of going down?
I don't think so, because the way the beat system works for our police department, we have a minimum of 10 officers on the beat.
Right.
Each area. That's a minimum. So it could be 12 or 13. So that hasn't changed any. We still have that same amount. So I would probably say not, but I'm not 100% sure that.
I'm only asking because people
Sure.
in the public are asking.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, that would be a reasonable, logical thought process. But the same amount of folks are on the same beat. That hasn't changed. So, again, Judge Baker has done a really good job of trying to work around and finding folks, work projects and things of that nature.
I'm thankful he's doing it, but I just wanted to know, Chief, is there any kind of way we could put in this, any funding here that we can get an officer at the housing areas like we had before?
That's worked out. Already worked out.
Thank
Any
you.
more questions? Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. And then interest, that's just interest you can see is way down based on the economy and where we're talking about with, we put all of our funds into Georgia Fund 1, and this is the Georgia Fund 1 account, right, Chuck? And we just pull all of our money in there, and the interest is ridiculous right now, but at least we get a little bit. So we've got 30.
It's called Georgia Fund 1 account.
Georgia Fund 1. Like we get our local option sales tax, Councilwoman, what we do, we don't put it into our bank account here. It goes straight to this investment account, the Georgia Fund 1. And then in times where, like this time of the year and the next couple months where cash goes a little low, Chuck uses that investment account from Georgia Fund 1 to make sure we get the bills paid and all that type of thing. So that's that interest from Georgia Fund 1 and a little bit from our master bank account. Yeah, and we're very limited. It's a money market account. We're very limited, which I'm glad we are, and we should be, on what local governments can invest in. We can't invest in stocks and equities and all that. It's got to be very safe funds. So, and I'm glad it's that way. It should be that way, because there are some states that don't have that, and they've had some issues with that with local governments. Miami being one, Orange County, Florida, California being one, where they made some very bad investment choices. Okay. That is the general fund revenues. And there's the of course, we have a miscellaneous rent being the one where we have all of our rent from the Recoil Trampoline Park. Then the two businesses below that at 5 Points. And that's about what's in rent. All right. We're still on general fund, guys. This will be the longest fund. This will be the longest we stay in any fund.
Go back, you said that warehouse and rent was for those two locations we have in 5 Points?
No, ma'am. The 108,000, that warehouse, that 30,000 you see there, the water sewer department rents the warehouse because the general fund owns it, so they pay a rental fee for it.
Okay, thank you.
A little crazy, I agree, but that's how it's set up. But yeah, the rent's the 5 Points area. And the women's building. The women's building rents some in there as well. Okay, we'll go through these quickly. Again, we're in the operational section, so we're going to start with mayor and council. There was 8 last year. There's 8 this year, so no change there. And you can see your budget really. There was no change there. A little increase in personal services. That's because somebody elected one of the benefits that didn't the prior year.
Second, I don't know if I got questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Previously, Councilman Vickers put in for the council to get increase. Was that put in here?
That will
Last year we see.
what we'll do is, because next year's an election year, so y'all will have to make that decision then based on the charter. Is that before qualifying begins? I'll bring something forth and you say yes or no.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
and it's kind of a minimal amount, so it won't affect that. Okay, this is an area we always spend some time on here in council because within your guys, your mayor and council budget, the agency contributions that we do through the general fund comes out of your guys' budget, if you will. The one thing that's different here is bottom from last is One Lounge Valdosta. We've discussed that. That's the $200,000 that the chamber's asking from the county and us. Industrial Authority was $250,000, but they agreed to let us break that up in $50,000 a year payment. So that $50,000 you see there represents first payment to One Valdosta Lounge. So that's what's new there. If you remember, we've talked about that. They made presentations to you guys about what One Valdosta Lounge is about. I can give you more I can give you additional information, whatever you might need. But I do want to point out that this is a new item in the budget for your consideration.
For 4 years, right?
4 years, yes, $50,000 a year, yes.
And we giving Southside Brick $15,000?
Yes, ma'am. That y'all agreed to increase that 2 years ago to $15,000 from $10,000. Southside Recreation is the only nonprofit that we give to out of the general fund. Any questions on that? Okay. And then out of the accommodations tax, not general fund, I'm just throwing this here because it's still an agency, the Historical Society gets $25,000, the Public Arts Commission gets $25,000, but that is paid from our discretionary funding from accommodations tax, not from the general fund. So with all that added together, it's about $230,000 of agency funding between general fund and the accommodations tax fund. All right.
Go
Yeah.
back on that.
Go back.
Okay, did we give anything to the library?
Go back.
Because I didn't see it. I see Southside Rec, but I don't see.
I don't think we. No, library.
do anything?
We haven't in the past. No, ma'am.
The reason I was asking, with us revamping and they're improving a computer area in that library on Griffin, I was wondering, did we include anything to assist them from the city? Because I know the county was giving so much.
Right. And that's what they do, because the library is a county function. Not saying we couldn't give something we want to, but,
I know it's a cap, but I'm saying
Yeah.
is there any way we could do something because our children do attend there?
right, that, it doesn't prohibit us from, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't, but it's why the county does it, because it is their function to do.
Okay.
All right, executive area, that's me, Teresa, Brian, and who have I left out? Me, Teresa, Brian, and we've got 4 there. Our intern, that's right, our intern, we have an intern in that area.
We won't tell her you forgot about her.
Yeah, well, she left, she graduated and left. Cassidy, left us, and, but I think Cassidy's gonna be back in Valdosta fairly shortly. But anyway, that's who that is, and again, not a big change in the budget. If you look at travel and training, last year we budgeted 8.9, and now it's 17.1. That's because now I've just put the chamber membership in my area, because we had a little snafu where we hadn't paid for a couple of years. Anyway, on the chamber side of thing, so when they sent it this year, I'm just going to pay for it out of my budget. So that's what you see, travel, training, and membership. It's the membership side, and that just pays for all of us as an organization. That's what that increase is. Okay. Public relations. That's our 3 folks in public relations, Shara, Eric, and Marcus. Again, pretty much a continuation budget on their part as well. Okay. Then elections, our election expense will come in next fiscal year because at June 30, so ours won't be until November of 23, so that you'll see money there next budget year. Here's our city attorney, solicitor, and indigent defense. Not a lot of change there. Other general admin, this is DeMarcus and Tara and Curtis Mitzi, our custodial staff for the City Hall Annex, and the customer service building. Their expenses are a little bit down because last year we stocked up on a lot of disinfectants and things like that for COVID. So we had an inventory now, so we didn't have to buy as much this year.
So we hired Mr. Curtis back part-time after he retired.
Mr. Curtis is part-time, yes. Mr. Curtis really should be classified as the assistant city manager, is really what his title should be. Curtis knows everything that's happening at this city and a little more. Municipal court, we've talked about that. As you can see, the total cost that we're recommending this year is $813,000, and as we just talked on the revenue side, they're bringing in $750,000 in revenues, the estimate. All right, now we're to human resources. 4 folks, still 4 folks. Some increase there in supplies as we're going to really get back to doing more of our in-house training, which we had not done quite as much during the COVID time, but we're going to be picking a lot of that back up. As you see, it's under supplies, and travel and training is up fairly significantly, but the overall from budget to budget went 487 to 492. Okay, finance. There's the different areas of finance. 24 total folks, and still 24 total folks. Most of that increase in that area would probably be in the 3.5% cost of living from 2.2 to 2.4. And other services and charges, and that's IT charges. You know, we have all the IT functions in one fund, so we're still tweaking that to charge that out the right way to the various departments. So you'll see some fluctuations in this, and of course, they're high users, of course, of our IT area, so they get a pretty hefty charge.
And we'll be doing some in-house training with them also to cut down some of their budget costs.
Engineering, 27 folks, and nothing changed there, still 27. Not a lot of change really in their contractual services. You'll see from 1.4 to 1.9. But if you remember, Pat, before Pat's retirement, he talked a lot about the TIMS system, TIMMS, and that's the system that runs all the news signalization and synchronization and all that stuff that we won through the smart cities, and we had a little bit of that back to us. But this is for a 10-year contract for their services. So this is just something that I think it's $386,000 we have to pay next year, but it's a 10-year. It's a 10-year agreement. So that's why that's up this year, and it'll go back down next year. There's police, 209, 209.
Mark,
Yes.
on the police, you know, us staffing 209, what is our current number with the police department?
Can you go back one, please? Thank you.
Chief. She said that up there. She remembers it because I don't have it right.
What?
Just did an update today.
You gonna put her on the spot?
You can just holler it out, chief.
Better than mine.
Out of our 209 employees, we got 15 part-time civilians. Those are full. We've got, well, except for one who is parking enforcement. We've got 27 full-time civilians. We are full there. We have 167 sworn. We are not full there. But you have to remember, for the past several years, you guys have been giving us people that we've never been able to fill the spots for. So when I took over as chief, we had 22 openings. We've added 20 new positions that we've never had anybody in. So that's put us up to 42 openings is what I had, and we're 4 short from that, so we're at 46.
Okay.
So how many total do we need? I mean, what would be like the number?
46 would have us full, and that's at 167. But that's after you all have added 20 positions since I've been chief. And when I took over, we had 22 openings.
So that all the council understands, we're budgeted for 209, we just don't have 209 actually.
We're budgeted for
working.
167 sworn, and then the 41, 42 civilian.
Right.
So we're budgeted for 160. How many sworn do we need though?
46.
We need 46.
That's our goal.
That's our goal before I ask for more.
Yeah, that would add 2 people per beat.
That's adding 4 people per shift. So that's a total of 16 people getting added to the road.
Is there anything else?
Or, I'm sorry.
Is there anything else you need from us to help you to get there? I mean, besides forcing, I'm just asking. I mean, this is what it's about.
I'll be honest, it's money. I mean, you know, the benefits are great. We're not going to complain.
But it's the
equipment's
salary.
great. And sometimes it's salary, but not all the time.
Not really.
It's not all the time. I don't know of one thing. It's a nationwide issue right now, contrary to what's being said right now. When I was in school in April with 49 chiefs and sheriffs from around the nation, the #1 topic is recruitment and retention. It's everywhere. We've been through years of the COVID where we've had no police academy. We've had no ability to do our training, no ability to recruit, any of that. So we're a year behind doing that. We have people retiring. We had a death, unfortunate death. We've had 3 that had to retire medically that would still be here working. So things do pop up. We went through a year where we just couldn't do anything about it. So that has not helped us. We had 9 retire in the past 2 years that had anywhere from 25 years of experience up to 42 years of experience. You can't expect them to stay much longer. I mean, it's just a cycle, but it is nationwide. So.
But
I know we just.
But on the, can I just add real quick? But on the positive side, 2 testings ago, we had 30 people, 30 plus people
it is
testing.
increasing.
And we've told you the positive folk, the last 2 recruiting classes, they all made it through. That's another problem we have, is that as a recruit, they may not make it to the academy. They drop out or they
Right. One
can't
thing
do it.
that Georgia did on top of everything else was add a physical agility course to the police academy. You have to pass, we already have ours that we have to pass. Now to get to the academy, you have to pass a state administered physical agility course. We've had 5 people, 5 females, that we couldn't hire because we couldn't put them in the academy because they couldn't pass that physical agility. One was off 1 second. And we couldn't hire her because the academy would not accept it. So we're running into walls on different things, but we are trying more. Recruiting, we've gotten out with Valdosta Mall. They're letting us come out there once a quarter, and that has turned out to be incredible for us. We're out at Moody at their taps, which is when they're exiting out. We're out there every month talking with them. So we're seeing an increase back. It's just, it is a long process.
Well, I mean, I just didn't want it to be based upon, you know, something that we could probably look at or tweak or change or.
Just be patient.
I think our new, you've all seen the recruiting video. That has generated a lot of interest.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And our new whole little setup, our booth we have at recruiting, it catches your eye. You know, so I think that's had a lot of effect, positive effect. But I'm encouraged by having those large testing classes again. Where we've had 3 to 5 people, and now we got 30 plus. So I'm encouraged by that.
And again, it is a nationwide issue.
It is.
Contrary to what some have said.
And Councilman, you asked what you could do, and you've done what you can do. Those 4 folks a year that we've eased into the budget, we're now prepared on a budgetary basis. If let's say something happened, Leslie gets them all, we're prepared on a budgetary basis now to offer those folks a job. So we're financially on that side ready. But again, just based on a lot of the recent postings and things, just keep in mind what Leslie said. We were 22 to the,
when I started in 2018, thanks to you all, I had 20 positions
Yeah, so
for me,
those-
but I've never put anybody in. So that alone has us,
Yeah.
So retirements, unfortunate retirements,
yeah. So
and 1 year of having a fleet.
I mean, you're doing a good job. I just wanted to make sure that we, you know,
I wish there was a magic key. I could come beg all of y'all, but I just don't think there is. But, you know, you look around everywhere. Everybody's retiring. Law enforcement is just one of those professions right now that we're starting to build back up. Years where people just don't want to get in the profession, but we're getting back. It's just not changing.
gotcha.
We're hanging.
Thank you.
Thanks.
you remember. That's right. 2 days a week.
Just the facts, man.
The facts and nothing else. Where am I at now? Police, let me get over here to them. All right, here's police expenditures. Now, I'm going to explain real quickly. When you see personal services, 13.4 to 12.4, about $1 million difference. It's what we just talked about. We budget for all of those 16 positions that y'all have graciously given us over the last 4 years. But we know Leslie, like we just said, is not going to hire them. So we take a little bit back off of that, and we'll call it vacant position adjustment to make this work. So, but I said earlier, like I said, we've got the positions there now. We just need the bodies to fill them. So I would love the day comes, well, it's going to make it harder for Amy, but when the day comes, we're fully funded, and we don't have to worry about a budgeted vacancy. But past that, that's, we've already talked about her capital in that area. Okay, Amy? Just breaking it down by division, really no change there. There's the Patrol Bureau. And of course, that's where most of our conversation previously just generated. You can, again, that reduction in personal services is what I just talked about with budgeted vacancies. Really no change there. There's the training. Okay, support. Support under other services and charges, as you'll see, 117 to 201. That's primarily the IT charge area we just talked about. This is where all of the majority of IT charges for the police department go right here in support, and we continue to tweak that to make sure the right amounts are going to the right areas. There's the crime lab. Crime lab is generating about $70,000 a year now, and we continue to have folks interested in us providing a service to them. All
So
right.
we still haven't drawn the Lowndes County into using our crime lab?
Yes, ma'am. If they use us, they pay us. We don't have a contract with them, but they have used us, and we charge them a fee for whatever that service is. We sure do.
Thank you.
They do participate on a small basis. All right, fire department. No change in the manning in the fire department. Here's a summary of the total department. We went from 9.8 to 10.3. Majority of that is what we spoke of with the 3.5 cost of living. I will add, Chief Boutwell, the personal issue may not be as severe as with Chief Manahan, but as we know, the county continues to take employees from our fire department. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah. Mark, just real quick, regarding the new fire station that we're looking at up in Councilman Howard's district, are we showing manning on this chart for that station, or is it too early for that
It's
yet?
too early for that.
Too early.
You're probably going to see that next year.
Okay.
We're just still trying to get the property right now that we need. Great question. All right. Just these are different divisions of the fire department. Administration. Here's the operations. This is where the firefighters are, which you expect to be the largest one. Fire prevention, fire maintenance, the training area of the fire department, special ops, and I know that was quick, but there's really just no changes within these operational budgets.
So we have to keep him up to par for him to keep his SOS.
Yeah, and we're expecting any day for that for something to be announced to Chief Boutwell. They keep saying it, don't they, Chief? But he never gets that information. And I will say again, there had been some conversation on the street that we had already received our ISO rating, and absolutely false.
Mark, you mentioned retention, so can I go back to retention for fire department? So, a while back, didn't we vote or whatever, that if fire members of the fire department don't stay for a certain amount of time, they have to reimburse some of their training because of their financial concerns? Do we do the same thing for our police department?
We do.
Is that the same?
We do. Absolutely. And most of those, if they wait right to when that time expired, and
I'm not saying that they owe us before they. I'm not saying that. I'm just asking that question. Did we do it with both departments?
Both, yes.
Yes. Okay. I thought we did. I just wanted to confirm that.
All right. When we continue on, community protection. These are our city marshals. We have budgeted 5 folks in that division this year. As I mentioned earlier, we are recommending a technician, an administrative technician for this area to help the marshals. We're restructuring. Anitra is really doing a wonderful job on restructuring that, and they really need somebody to help them administratively, because right now, we went back for each of them representing their own self in court, which we needed to do much earlier than we did. So now they're doing that. They're doing their own letters, they're out in the field, so I just think, we just feel they need some admin support in that area. Next year, just to kind of set you up for next year, you're probably going to see a request for another marshal as well. But this year is for an administrative technician to assist the marshals.
So what you're saying is that the setup that we had under Ms. Ross, we're changing it to a different...
Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't working, and we, to be honest with you, Councilwoman, we played with it too long trying to make it work. So this will take care of a lot of that issue. Okay. Does anybody need a restroom break before I go on this? Okay, let's take a quick little break.
Wake up, Richard. Mark, you want 10 minutes? 10 minutes, and we'll come back to 30 and then eat.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, just in case you forget, still in the general fund, hadn't left it yet. Okay, when you look at this chart here, this manning chart, we currently have 4. We're requesting 0, because if you remember we started, this is one of the areas we're asking for a restructure, or at least introduce you this year to something we're gonna continue to ask for restructure, planning and zoning. So that's why you see nothing there, but you see the 2022 budget. Okay, so what we're asking for, what we're requesting, is to take the planning and zoning division and break it down to a planning division and a zoning division. Organizations our size and up, they're 2 separate functions. We used to be that here when Carmela Carter was here. Oh, that was her name back in the day. When Carmela was here, she was zoning only. We contracted planning out with the Development Center. So that's how it was split. So then Anne Marie Wolf came along. She was hired as our planner because Carmela went to the county as their zoning person. So that's how it all got consolidated. But with the work and everything that's happening now, I do agree with Matt that it is time for us to consider that split. So in the planning area right here, you see 3 positions. One would be a planning director, which would be Matt Martin. The second would be a senior planner, historic preservation, who would be Jeff, who's currently there. So what we're asking in the planning division is for an additional position called a senior planner. And we will grow this as years go, but to kick this restructure off, that's what we were asking right here. That would be the 3 people in the planning division. Okay? Any questions on that?
Not yet.
Okay? So, Andy? I'm ready. Yeah. All right, in the zoning area, okay, what we're asking for there is a zoning administrator, which would probably be a current employee that's there now. Then we're asking for a zoning officer, which will be a current employee. Just like with the planning division, there'll be 2 people that's already there that will go into these roles. Then the additional position we're asking for is a zoning technician. So with the restructure, we're asking for a senior planner in the planning division and a zoning technician in the zoning area. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Yep.
It's going to be about it will be about a $267,000 increase, if that was your question. Yeah, when you go back and look at hiring the new 2 folks over the time, will be about $267,000.
Question,
Yes.
will Matt still tend to oversee zoning?
Here, Matt's the guru on zoning, we know that. But we need Matt more on the planning side, but he will definitely be there for some guidance if needed on the zoning side as well. So it's not going to be, if you decide this July 1st, there's going to be that immediate break. There won't be. I don't think so, but a good question.
The same office, still talking to each other every day.
Yep. One thing he did ask for both areas, was an administrative assistant for both, but we're not asking for that this year. We think we're going to try to make that work in a different fashion. But traditionally, they should be two different offices. Planning is a very proactive process. Zoning is a very reactive process. So we got everything trying to go on like that in one office, and it's just too much going on now. And if you come by here, when I come up, Matt's here every time I come up here to work. On the weekend, 8 o'clock at night, Matt's van is out here. And we've got to find, and again, that's not the only reason, but a break is very logical. Yes.
One more question, who's going to present zoning cases to the Planning Commission and Mayor and Council?
The zoning administrator.
Do you know who the zoning administrator is going to be?
It'll be a
Isn't that the little
more
assistant, short lady?
no. I prefer not to say it this time. It will be an existing employee.
Don't turn around, Matt.
So Mr. Matt Martin will be over planning, Jeff will be next, and then we're gonna look for a senior planner.
On the planning side, that's right. Matt Martin will be the planning director for the city of Valdosta. Jeff will be the senior planner for historic preservation. And then the new position we're asking for is a senior planner, which will be the new person on board.
And the zoning officer, it'll be a zoning director.
We'll have a zoning administrator, which will more than likely be a current employee.
And then a zoning officer,
Then a zoning officer,
already here.
which is already here.
But we needed a zoning tech.
And the zoning tech is the new position we're asking for on the zoning side of things. But again, I knew we'd get the question about Matt. We will always depend on Matt to handle those
So when I
type
got
of things.
questions, I can't go to Mr. Martin for my zoning questions. I would have to go to this person that we're hiring as a zoning administrator instead of,
Eventually, that's exactly right.
but not
I mean,
immediately.
we will ease everybody into the process. Everybody will be easy, and it's not going to,
This is a complete phase-in project.
yeah.
The person who process the rezoning applications and things that are brought to city council, that is actually a current planning function. So the senior planner will do that. So the planner will be for a zoning administrator, will be representative of the field, and all the zoning variance related stuff that's regular. But land use policy kinds of changes, planner will take care of that. So you're not getting rid of me, I'll still be coming.
Like that.
How about,
And Matt's really right. This is truly a phase-in, because if you see his whole plan, there's 2 more planners, and there's 2 more zoning people, and there's 2 more administrative techs as we go. This is just get that initial division going. So he's absolutely right. It is phased in.
Matt, have you spoiled people along the way, though? Do they like being able to sit there and ask Matt both sides of the coin?
Planners and zoning people who won't work hard.
Yeah.
Land use planning and zoning overlap. The long-range planning, infrastructure, comprehensive plans, and all of that, the grid line, all of it's long-term. Zoning also gets into licensing, review, plan, review, day-to-day functions. And that's where the division is on. But
We're getting away from mom and pop, and we're getting to
So we're
plan is
metropolitans
more
now.
sophisticated.
we'll split 2 and 2, and then each will have one.
Out of curiosity, understanding the value that, a planner could bring to the Land Bank Authority, do we see maybe some more engagement between planning and the Land Bank Authority?
Maybe a good idea.
I don't think we'll see it. Well, you may see it in the phase 1, but the next phase that Matt's asking for is a comprehensive senior planner, and that's where that would fall. We're just trying to get the ball going with this one.
Gotcha, okay.
But in the future, Matt is going to ask for a comprehensive senior planner, and that's where that would fall in.
Don't move us too fast, let's just stay right here.
One zoning, one plan, we decided just to keep it very simple. And I think eventually, the public really will like that, is because we're going to get things done a lot more timely than we have been, and that's no criticism of Matt and his group, it's just, this is coming overwhelming,
So this will go in effect next year, or we'll phase it in?
We'll start, July 1st, we'll, if you approve it, somewhere early July, we'll begin putting out an advertisement for these two positions and follow the normal city protocol for recruitment.
Getting ourselves and the development community accustomed to the split and who's doing what. It's just gonna pick up.
So these two new positions, they're like entry-level positions, or?
They're intermediate,
Yeah.
senior level planners, zoning administrator type experience. So yeah, the plan is eventually 3 senior level planners and 3 major areas of planning: storm preservation, long-term planning, short-term planning, with a helper, zoning office person in charge, the in-house that does most of the work, but we also need field work. Zoning eyes and legs in the field.
The zoning technician could almost be considered entry level on the zoning side of it.
Correct. And in other communities, that's exactly how they do that.
So the budget recommended in 2023 budget, that's already in, you've already included it?
Yes, ma'am.
Positions, sir?
The salaries and everything's already in there.
Okay.
If you guys approve it, if not, then of course back it back out and go from there.
Well, I'll give you this, you kept it under your vest.
My vest, this one?
Uh-huh,
Sometimes you have to do things like that, Councilman Carroll.
uh-huh.
I think you need to involve us in the day-to-day. Just kidding.
But those are there.
I understand that
Yeah.
he is, in so many words, you've been split in half to do 2 different entities, and I'm just saying it my way. You're burnt out, and you need some rest to go home, be able to do proper planning work, and then someone else will have the opportunity to do proper zoning work. Yeah. Right.
Right.
All right. No, don't teach me everything. No, say something to help me.
Yeah. And honestly, this is something Matt and I have discussed 2 years now. Several years, we're getting ready for this, so we just felt this was the year we need to truly bring it forth. You know, as we talk about succession and future leaders here at the city, Matt's absolutely right. We need to be bringing on the right folks to get us ready for that next leadership that's going to be here at the city. So,
And this is part of the process too, the hierarchy within each division is set. That comes with it. And then also that training comes with it too.
Sounds good.
all right. That's
Thanks, Matt.
planning and zoning. All right, next is community development. And you see we've had administration, which is the tech, Cassandra, and the neighborhood development area is Richard. Anitra's salary is paid when we get to talk about the HUD fund. Anitra's salary is pretty much paid from that because they allow us a 20% of our annual allocation for administration. Since that's the highest salary in that division, we choose to put her in the HUD fund rather than the general fund. So that's what that is. There's some increases here. I thought may not be in this area, maybe in the other area, that where we increased the budget for housing demolition. That's in code enforcement. That was in code enforcement. That's one thing I meant to tell you guys. We've upped that budget for housing demolition to help with substandard housing for the code enforcement folks. It had been at 80 for a couple of years and we kept dropping it backwards, and now we're really bumping that back up to get some traction on reducing substandard housing. But Richard Joyner is a part of that, working with the marshals on all of that, so, but that will be budgeted in the code enforcement.
So easy question, taking some of that CDBG allotment, the 20% they allow you is just a recommendation, it's not required, correct?
It's a 20% admin. They allow you to take 20% for admin.
They allow you, or you could spend that entire amount on project.
Well, like I said, it works for us because we don't have to put that, the general fund doesn't have to bear that cost.
All right.
Any more questions? All right, Main Street, two positions. This year it's two brand new folks in those two same positions, and they're just doing a wonderful job. Brandy's doing a wonderful job. Get texts and calls from the merchants downtown just saying their sales have never been so good than they have in the last few months. So again, that is I think that's because folks are getting out more, but I think Brandy and Allie are doing a great job. You know, if you had a chance to go to the Brown Bag concert up at Park, please do so. They've done a wonderful job with that, and I'm excited because I knew once we could get one function on up at Park, many more would follow, and I think that's absolutely the truth. But earlier I was talking about Christmas decorations. You see that 366 there. The majority of that's going to be trying to make the amphitheater part look really good at Christmas. And some different Christmas things we have in mind for downtown as well. So that's really the increase there. Public Works, right-of-way maintenance, 29 and 29. These are the guys that keep our highways and byways looking clean and always really looking nice. They've got a very tough job out there in the weather all the time, but they do a really good job with that. You know, they're very important to this whole process since, you know, with the dissolving of the KLVB, these are the folks that take up the slack and keeping the litter up and that type of thing. But it's continuous. As you all know, these 29 people can't do it by themselves because you go anywhere, they mow it, 24 hours later, the mowing still looks good, but there's trash everywhere. And I maintain, you know, you've heard Mr. Quarterman speak of parking lots, but it's so much more than even commercial parking lots. It's people throwing the trash in the ditch and it's rolling down into the riverways and our waterways. So we've got to figure out how to get that. I mean, again, I always say it's a shame in this day and age that we have to stand here and talk about spending money on picking up people's litter where they're just irresponsible and throw it out the window. We shouldn't be having this discussion, nor should we have to be spending taxpayer dollar to do that. So I don't. Yep. Right beside it. Right beside it. Yep. Right beside it. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and Public Works, they went around to 20, 25 years where we felt needed a trash can. We placed them. The trash can is empty, but there's trash piled beside it. So anyway, that's one of my soapbox deals with it. Somehow we've got the, we just, again, these guys should just have to mow. We've tried that. If you can, here's the deal though. You know, I've heard, well, I think I heard Mr. Quarterman say, well, the police need to fine them, give them a ticket. Well, who litters when you see a police around you? I'm not letting no one down, throw anything out. The police is around. So there's got to be other things, and I don't know what it might be, but I hear what you're saying, but nobody throws trash out when there's a police car behind them or beside them or they see it. They look around to make sure. So anyway, but these guys do a tremendous job, and their budget's pretty much the same kind of budget as they had last year. Cemetery, 12 folks. Not all are full-time. There's part-time involved in those 12 as well. Pretty much their budget's the same. The difference being the $30,000 in capital they had last year is they didn't have a capital item this year. Then the arborist, there's 3 folks in our arbor division. They maintain the trees and the landscape for the city and help out with Parks and Rec and other authorities that need some help with those type of issues. So again, budget's pretty much the same as it was last year.
Mr. Barber.
Yes, ma'am.
Back on the cemetery.
Uh-huh.
I'm back on that again. We have an area over on perimeter, and there are some citizens that I think if we do it in some phases, if we advertise something like some individuals with some little cash they would like to donate to do something in the area with the cemetery and
Like a new cemetery.
senior parks and a senior citizen building over there. How could we bring that into?
So you're asking about a new Sunset, Sunset Hill too?
Yes.
Kind of. We have looked at that because we have been looking at that a while. We've looked at, Rich and I just recently looked at mausoleum type things to try to get more use out of the current Sunset. Expensive, we knew it was going to be, but things that we could do to continue to expand Sunset, because cities are really getting out of the business of opening new cemeteries, because see, Sunset we have forever. Like I just told you, we lost a little bit on the investment to keep the perpetual care going. Not saying we can't do it, but we'd prefer to find some other option rather than being liable for another cemetery. And there's so many funeral homes now that have their own cemetery. That's usually the trend you're seeing now. It's not a city or county opening a new one, but funeral homes themselves that want their funeral home, their cemetery is what's happening now. But we, like I said, we'll continue to look at that. We have not forgot about that question. So. All right. We've talked on the COVID Relief Fund. We've talked a lot about this. And again, as I told you, when you see this statement, it's going to look a little quirky, but the bottom line is, just remember we looked at the retreat. We're going to get $16 million, $16.2 million. You have allocated the 16.2. So eventually this statement will show $16.2 million coming in. And when we make that last expenditure, it'll all zero out. But this is why we have to do it this year. Starting left-hand column again, FY21. You see that $3.215. That's what we paid the employees in FY21 for premium pay. So that's why you see the money came in, because we got the $8 million. The money went back out, the 3.2. Okay? So that's what that is. FY22 this year, we didn't budget. We didn't have any budget because of course we were waiting for the final regs that we now have. Now, FY20, the estimate, this is what Chuck and accounting estimate's going to happen between when we got the money in June 30. So if you remember, we talked about at the retreat, you had 2 things you could do. You could take a $10 million allowance under the negative impact, economic impact, or you could let them calculate it for you. So when UGA calculated ours, it was like $970,000, right, Chuck? The actual calculation. When they looked at everything we turned into them, was $970. But then when the final regs came out, they said, oh, you can do that, but yet we're going to let you just say, take $10 million. And why that was important for us is because without taking the allowance, things that we get federal funding for, such as our transit, it wasn't allowed unless we take the allowance. So remember, that's why we took the $10 million. It's just, it doesn't affect anything we can do except enhance what we can do, because now you can use it for regular type government operations. But like I said, if you didn't take the allowance, it was not going to allow us, because we get federal funding for transit. So we weren't going to be able to, as you recall right now, you've got $500,000. We wouldn't have been able to do that without, we would not have been able to do that without the allowance. So, with that being said, Chuck had to recognize the allowance of $10 million. No projects to it, just $10 million. Our report, his last report, we shows that we showed the $10 million on the last report that we took that. So that's why it looks a little funny, but we have to show that for reporting. And then we've discussed, so here's the deal. If you take all your revenue, our line item starting from 21, you take the $3,215,000, you add the $10 million, you add the $3,041,08, that comes back to you $16.2 million that we'll get eventually. I know it's great, but at the end of the day, it'll all wash out at the end of the day. Any questions? Any more questions on that? All right, and again, that just kind of gives you an idea of the breakdown of what we've got. We've talked about some of that. Then the next slide kind of gives you an idea of the individual things we have going on in there. Yeah, you see right here on the that is the $3,040,000 again. That's just takes us for us to get us to the total of $16.2 million. And we show, and you've noticed, go back one name. Let me show it this way. So you see, we got $11.3 million at fund balance. So as we eat this, as we begin to pay on these projects, that's going to go away to zero eventually, as to the last project. So that may help it clear it up a little bit. The revenue is going to be recognized. So from this point on, it's just going to be the expenditures hitting. All the revenue is going to be recognized. And again, kind of a summary of the expenditures, capital outlay. We looked at that area. That's most of the projects that we have for our buildings, fire station, this project, things like that. Building and structures is in there as well. Operating transfers is a little bit different. That's the $500,000 I just mentioned that you guys allocated for the transit. We're showing an operating transfer to the transit fund. That way that can match up with what we're receiving from federal funding, so it all kind of ties in together on that statement. That's why it won't be recorded as an expense here, but as an operating transfer, so all that matches up if we have to show anything on the transit side. And then the next slide just breaks down those areas again that we've already talked about. So, like I said, if our plan, why you don't see nonprofit here, grants, is because, we're in the thought process that that'll all be done in this year, in FY22. Same deal with the small business grants, all be done in this year. But again, if we get, it doesn't really matter, because if the check gets here in May or June, we've got our full $16.2 million to finish the rest of our project. So. And we'll just work this as we go. Again, I use the example of the housing complex on Griffin Avenue. That does come to fruition. Again, we'll reallocate, and it won't be on this listing as an expenditure. So that's why it's kind of like this. Here's the HUD fund we talked about earlier. We estimated a $700,000 allocation because their HUD's way behind. Normally we would know our annual allocation. Last year was $693, $677, but this year I don't know when we're going to know what that is. So we just assume maybe we'll get a little bit more, and we up to an even $700,000. And then, like I said, that's broken out with administration. Then we have housing education. $20,000 goes to the Seed Center at the chamber, and the remainder all goes to eradication of substandard housing, the rehabs, the complete revamping of substandard housing. And that's the pattern we've followed for the last few years. One time we stepped out and we tried to do small business grants to folks, and we carved out $50,000 for that. We had 3 people. 1 paid it back, and 2 took the money and ran. So we decided, let's roll that back in. We weren't real successful with it. So all of this really goes to the eradication of substandard housing. at the moment, or education and things of that nature. Okay, here comes transit fund. All right, on the transit fund, let's start on the revenue. I'm going to start on the 2023 recommended budget. I think the big question you guys may ask, what is going to be the city's portion this year that we're actually going to have to pay? And that's going to be the $719,416. That includes the half of the federal, the earmark money that we got through Senator Ossoff's office. That's half of that, because we did over a 2-year period. But even with that, there's a cost to us for accepting that, because every hour we do more than what our contract is, that's our cost. Okay? So when we got that $945,000, it was not free dollars to us. We still have to pay any hour we increase with VIA is a cost to us. And that would be whether we decide to do a new vehicle, it's still going to increase hours, or we just increase driving times, no matter what. So that federal congressionally directed spending, we have to pay the same thing we paid as we are now. Here's what we think. There's still some conversation, but for that spending that we got, 80% is federal, 20% City of Valdosta. Now, our regular contract for capital is 80% federal, 10% state, 10% City of Valdosta. Our normal on operations side, it's 50% federal, 50% City of Valdosta, because the state does not participate on the operating side. But because the type of system we have, microtransit, it's hard to break down capital and operating. So they say we're half and half. Half of it's capital, half of it's operating. So you can see it's a complicated little formula that you got to do. But the bottom line to it all, if we utilize the directed spending and we do some increased hours, the max we will have to pay is $719,416. As you remember, we talked about this at the retreat. We were at $203,000, $204,000 area when we started this. But if you increase hours, it makes sense you're going to have to pay more. Now, where this comes from, $500,000, we're going to take from what you guys allocated in ARPA right away. We're going to use that right away. The remaining $219,416, if you remember, in the discretionary T-SPLOS, we're fixing to use 216 of that from the T-SPLOS. So it takes us back to the conversation we had at retreat. We've got it.
After 1 year, you're saying we're still going to have to
Yes. If we do, that's the max. That's the max. If that's the max, what we're saying. It could be less than that depending on what we do, but that's the max.
Unless we can get,
If we don't choose the hour expand, if we don't expand with that 940 earmark that we have, if we just keep everything like this, then it's what is it, 219, somewhere in there.
If we don't expand, if we don't take the 990 something, whatever, we stay where we're at, we can take that $500,000 earmark, cover our costs for the next 2 years, and in the meantime, try to figure out how to come up with 219 for the following third year, so that's what we're at.
no,
Yeah. Councilman Gibbons said no earmark, let it go.
I thought ARPA funds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's,
$500,000 ARPA funds.
yeah. Oh, you talking about that? We allocated, we didn't,
allocated.
we don't earmark, Councilman, we allocate.
The $500,000 we
there's no expansion, fairly close. Fairly close. Much closer than we are here.
But if we take that money,
Richard, is that Richard right there?
No, it's Chuck.
Chuck?
but if we take it,
They're looking for an increase in, say, what we are.
Right, that's why I just said it could go up, but
yeah, but the thing about it is, after this year, we can't afford $719,000.
you'd have one more year, and remember, because I was going to move a SPOS project out of T-SPOS discretionary, move it over, then that would be it, the next year would be it. So we'd buy ourselves one more year. So that's one more, we'd buy one more year.
And then either we're gonna have to figure out 719, or we're gonna have to eat crow.
And we're fortunate that, thus far, we've not come up with any of our own monies because of CARES, ARP, and some other things with it. We haven't had to pay, this will be the first time we are actually coming out of City of Valdosta funds this year.
So if we want to expand it, we got to
We have to pay for
want
it,
more money.
because we buy from VIA by hour. It doesn't matter number of vehicles or anything, it does have an indirect bearing, but everything is the number of hours.
And the only source of revenue we have outside of ARPA money right now would have to come from the general fund.
Well, stepping back, we do have some availability with T-SPOS in our discretionary funding. That's where the that 219, the remainder of that is coming from discretionary funding, and I think we would have that for one more year.
The year after that, we're not going to have.
And then past that, we will,
So if it gets back to general fund.
yes. I mean, we're having to, and it's not a surprise, those that are on the committee, we knew this was we had to find the money.
Yeah,
We knew we had to find it.
but there's a difference of trying to allocate the fine 225 or something versus 719.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
In the meantime, we can figure out a game plan of advertising for perhaps vehicles.
And I hear, right.
Because we can figure out that
That was doable, wraps and sponsorships and all that. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, and it can produce some revenue, but it's much more reasonable to bridge that gap when you're at 200,000 instead of 700, over 7. And I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm just, like we talk about the retreat, it's something that we've got to put our heads together and come up with a plan.
I think we need to be working on that now.
Well, I think the sooner the better.
Not on the committee.
Couple of things I need to explain. The 719, you said worst case scenario. That's like a max. Is that a max if we take all 993
It's half of it.
to try and keep up with the
It's
average?
half. Remember, we have to.
That sounds like a way to go from 250 to 719. We're not doubling our operating hours from 6 in the morning to 9 at night, 5 days a week.
But again, you got to remember, that's why I went through those formulas with you, how it's calculated. With this, there's no state involvement. It's us. We're having to put 20% of that now. The state doesn't get involved with that side of it for this earmark.
So for every hour increased, it's 50/50?
It goes from 90/10, 80/20, and it's not just more hours, it's more vehicles on the road for those hours.
Still at $42 an hour for every hour on the,
The number is 63.72 might be driver hours and service times. So
63 what?
6372.
Per hour.
Now, again, I'm not saying this be now. I'm just saying this is something we need to address sooner or later and figure out a way to do it. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's time to start making those decisions now.
I mean, tomorrow, you and Chuck and y'all see, we see the numbers, but y'all are in the numbers, and that's where, I guess we just need y'all's, like,
Recommendation.
correct.
the recommendation of, do we need to do this or not? Because I'm gonna tell you, if this was my budget at my house, it'd be a no. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say, let's triple our budget, or triple our costs.
Yeah, but a hard no based on numbers doesn't answer 65,100 rides. It doesn't answer the quality of life that we've just handed to the citizens of Valdosta. So there has to be a discussion somewhere in the middle. There really does. There's no.
The way you're gonna hurt them, you take it away from the citizens.
There's no argument. I don't think anybody thinks that,
What I'm talking about is.
but we have to wait to pay for it. That's all I'm saying. We need to find a way to pay for it.
Realize we can't pay it, and then what we're gonna do? Back it back
Yeah.
down?
So we say we got a service we want to provide, and you guys are the numbers guys, and we got to start finding it. So that's.
Well, what the numbers you see, I mean, they're not going to stray much. I'm just going to be honest with you. What you see is what it's going to be,
Unless the feds maybe come.
unless we can get some additional, something like we have been. But again, until we find that permanent solution, guys, we're kicking a can down the road.
So we need to reach out to OSAR again to help us with this.
Somebody, yes.
I don't know. His
Yeah.
obviously seems like it comes with.
That's exactly, there may be some opportunity. But even with that, I just want to continue to stress, we've got to find the permanent solution. We're just kicking the can down the road to keep asking for more money because we're going to be in the same situation every time. So that's all the point we're making.
It's 3 times bigger.
It's a little bigger if we max everything out, but if we keep everything the same, we can be a lot more realistic with it. So, and I know, and I have heard folks would like some Saturday service, thing like that, but right now, Monday through Friday is getting the majority of it done, to be honest with you. I would like to see a little more, but Monday through Friday is, what we looked at was what did we look at, Richard? Expanding it to,
The hours that we looked at on weekdays was, when I already started, somewhere at 9 o'clock in the evening. Right now, we're getting about 55 to 60% of the individual requirement. So we increase the hours, we're trying to get that 80, 90%.
So if we start transporting at 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night, that would help us where we're trying to get at.
Based off of the data that we're receiving, there's a demand for that 5:30.
Right. So we need that more than we do the weekend. That's what you're saying.
Right now, we're concentrating on
yes,
Yeah, that was my question.
right.
That was my question.
Yeah. Work, school, medical appointment, all of that was our whole goal. That's exactly right, Councilman. Right.
Yeah, the
But-
rest falls to the private
Yeah.
sector.
And again, it works out good because folks that were used to taking taxis anyway, because if you remember, we started this microtransit system. We can't compete with Uber or taxi systems because then we're going to lose our federal funding because we're then, we have a leg. So not doing on the weekend works well. Some of the taxis folks I talk with, they like it. They don't have any problem like they did with this because
Me too.
they have the business on the weekends and after hours or before. So everybody's sharing in it. All we're saying tonight, what Chuck and I, Richard, are saying, we've got to find a permanent funding source at some point in time to continue to go. Because even with these changes, it's additional hours, like we just finished talking about, it's going to increase our costs out of our pocket. So,
But that amount of hours would not be the max.
That amount of hours
I
doesn't
don't-
expand us to 719,000 in an ask, right?
We have that
Right.
we have 21 and 22. Numbers were about 1.2 million. However, with the earmark funding that we received from also office and the max that we received from 5307, we look at about 2.3 million. That's what our share is 70, 25 and 27%. That's what we come up with, that 17, 750.
that's our max. Like if we participate in everything they want us to. But if I'm hearing from you guys, you're happy with the 5:30 and all that, we can continue going that route. It will help the situation tremendously. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but still, maybe that buys us 2 more years, maybe.
Right, buys you two.
We've got to figure out where we're going to do. That's all we're saying, is it's a wonderful service, very popular. After this, you know, the only, Councilman Carroll is correct. We're in the general fund, looking for the funding. And we don't have enough room in our millage rate to
No.
even do that, to
We don't
even
have
think
enough.
about from the general fund,
We don't have enough in
honestly.
the general fund to come up with 219,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there's a solution. All I'm saying is I'm quite certain there's a solution out there. We haven't found it yet. We'll continue to look, see what we can do to mitigate it, and we'll continue to look. But I'm just saying, at some point in time,
Gotta find it.
we got to some decisions to make if we don't find this funding source.
So is there any way that you can get, you and Chuck could come up with what the numbers would be from the 5:30 to 8
We may
now?
be.
And then you can let us know, bring that back before us, and then we'll know exactly where we at, what we need to be at?
5 to 9.
Let's go 5 to 9, Mr. Hardy, and come back with a figure.
We'll get those to you.
Yeah, then we can
we've
see where
already
we
worked
at,
some-
what type of numbers
Yeah,
we need.
we've
to
worked
come
some
up with.
scenarios, so we'll get those to you so y'all can look at.
A 5 to 9 operating 5 days a week, and then Mark, when you and I were taking the earliest meetings with the, they also said they offer we're taking an à la carte service where they do it all, but they also said they offer any level of assistance from just the software, the routing software. So if you guys want to start looking at operating less than $62 an hour for owning your own fleet, and
We've already looked
We already
with that
done those
direction, and this is the less expensive route. We've already went that direction.
no,
No,
6 to 9. Yep, 5 days a week.
hour.
Which I think would be great, because a lot of people do have to be to work at 6.
Yes, so I think that's very reasonable to,
And all 7 aren't hitting the road at 6 o'clock. It's only what we've.
When that demand, yeah,
Vehicles.
yeah.
Okay.
Chuck know how to take a nickel, take a pen and make it be a nickel, so turn it to
You are so right. All right, so we're good with transit. We'll get y'all some ideas and give you some more numbers thrown at you, but again, it's really all about how all that stuff is calculated. It gets very complicated with it, so,
So he can stay here after 5-9, work on that, him and Richard.
yeah. All right, that's transit. Accommodations tax, you guys know what that's about. That's our 7% that we tack on to lodging charges. This year, we're thinking we're going to hit revenue streams about $3.5 million. Because if you remember back to the retreat, I showed you a graph that had the 2019 revenue collections, the 2020, and the 2021, and everything. 20 is already going past 2019.
Yeah.
For this year. So we're exceeded where our top was in 2019, post-pandemic. So collection rates are up. A lot of that may not necessarily be more folks in hotels, but the hotels are charging a bit more, just like we talked about with sales tax. They're charging more for their room per night. So again, this will go up because that tax is based on that. So we're doing a $3.5 million. That's what we think we'll get on accommodations tax this year. The next slide shows where we spend our accommodation tax commission. This is what we pay to hotels, or they withhold, either way they want to do it, for being that agent that collects that dollar to remit to us, so they get a payment for that. And as you know, we must pay the Tourism Authority approximately 42% of what that $3.5 million collection is. So that we must do that, no choice about that. Then we subsidize the conference center, $200,000 a year. If you notice, last year it was $258,971. We did that just to help the conference center out some because of COVID, to kind of help them start getting back on their feet. But I was clear with the board that this year would be $200,000 again, and we'll continue to decrease that as we go. Airport Authority, that's how we fund our 50-50 agreement with Lowndes County, is our 50% comes from Airport Authority. Arts Commission, Turner Center for the Arts, $190,000. Public Art, $25,000. Historical, $25,000. And then the operating transfers, some of that went, as I said, for Christmas decorations to the general fund. because they have a healthy fund balance for us to be able to do that. And that's really how we're doing all the things that you're seeing changing in downtown, is we're using this money for that type of thing when we transfer it over for Christmas decorations. That's how we did the flower baskets and all the things you see. That's how we do that.
And you said your other services and charges, what now?
It's zero this year. Last year, they probably had something, do you know what that is, Chuck? That 6,300 last year? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what was charged in there for other. It might have been a professional charge in there that, Chuck, it was probably their IT charges. What? $6,389. Not this year, last year.
You can go ahead, sir, while they look it up there.
Okay, all right. All right, sanitation. Again, this is one of our larger enterprise funds. Here's the financial plan for sanitation. Again, far left column shows you the actual numbers that were part of the numbers that Martin and Jenkins presented to you last week. Second column is what was adopted last year. Estimate is what accounting believes is going to be the balance at June 30th of this year. And then, of course, the last column being what is being recommended for you guys. So it's total sources of $6,563,306, and that's just what we charge for everything in sanitation, whether it be residential, commercial pickup, roll-offs. That's the combined revenue for the sanitation fund. The $212,000 from revenues from other governments, that's our royalty payment back from waste management. Depending on the number of tons we dump in the landfill, that's the payment that we get back. That's increasing somewhat. Now, if you see in 21, it was like 542. They were behind. There were some issues with that, so we recognized several payments in that 1 year, and then it got back online and going again. We're looking at expenditures of $6.533 million, slight increase from prior year. Okay. This is just a summary of the different expense classifications in the sanitation fund. As you can see, not a big change in any of those. We went from a total expenditure budget of 6,540 to 6,533, and that's just some other services and charges went down as we continue, and that's motor pool charges and things of that nature. So sanitation's a continuing budget for the most part. That 6,000 on the 6,389, that was banking charges, is what that was on the accommodations tax last year. Go back. I think I missed.
So we're not projecting to have any banking charges in this year's budget?
It depends on how Chuck allocates it, so I'm assuming his allocation didn't include such this year.
He's giving me that look, so I just have to go, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, next slide is the different divisions and the manning area and sanitation. If you notice, last year we had 54 folks. This year's 48. No one lost a job. They were just reallocated. They were mostly recycle folks that had a position there, and we just reallocated them to other positions within sanitation. I think 3 went to right-of-way and 3 to, that's the six folks, 3 to right-of-way and 3 to residential trash. Residential yard trash. So nobody lost a job. It's just as the recycle area, Rich will be presenting to you next council meeting that ordinance where we're going to restructure recycling in an ordinance form. And so that we haven't utilized that division in a while. So nobody lost a job. They were just relocated to somewhere else. All right, on the summary of revenues here, you'll see the different areas of how the revenue is collected. Residential pickup, of course, being the top one, $4,130,000. Commercial pickup, $1,350,000. We'll continue to grow that. Business, as you know, that's our business where we compete with private folks for that business. So if there ever comes a day when it's not making a substantial profit, we need to think about not offering that, being in that market any longer. Same deal with roll-offs and things of that nature. So total revenues is $6,350,000. We're not anticipating a fee increase on this fund as well. And for the $21.50, $22.50, whatever that monthly fee is, there's a ton of services you're getting for that amount of money. So we're trying to hold the line and keep it there, but that will be something we'll have to discuss in the future as a rate increase in this area as well at some point. And here's just some miscellaneous revenues where we find folks for not bringing their trash can back in and all that kind of thing is what that is. And we've already talked about the $212,000 from the Deep South Revenue Sharing Fund. That's just a little more explanation there. And we're going to do a few more things on this sanitation fund. This is the expenditure side of things and the different revenue classifications. Last year the budget was $952. This year recommendation is $936. And then we'll get to residential garbage. You can kind of get an idea of the classification of expenditures there. Last year $1,649,000. This year $1,753,000. That's probably the majority of that increase is from the cost of living increase. Commercial collection, this is what we were just talking about. Same deal there, pretty much a continuing budget. Residential trash, I hate to be redundant, but it's pretty much where it was last year. Roll off. This is one of the other areas that we compete in the private market for this business as well. Pretty much the same. Recycling. You can see the differences in the numbers just based on what we're doing. Recycle distribution. Well, I don't know the exact. Do you know an exact number, Richard, where we're at with that? We're collecting more. I can tell you we're collecting more.
We're collecting twice as much cardboard that we've done in the past because we're separating it at the sites. We're doing very well. Collecting cardboard. The other items, plastics and whatnot, that demand goes up and down, but it goes straight to the recycling facility.
The cardboard wise, we're doing well in the sense of making money off of it.
Yes, sir.
We're still not making as much as we in the past did, but it is our money. It's the only thing that we do make money off recycling for the most part.
So that trash dispenser, when I first came to city councilman, that we had at Public Works, that machine that ran all the time to separate, can we sell that to someone? Because we're not using it anymore.
Yes, ma'am. We thought about it. We just we want to make sure that we will never
Have to use it.
never need it again. So, and we're pretty much there.
Yeah, we're in need for funds now, so we need to sell some things to just be sitting there collecting dust.
That'd actually be one way to make sure we don't ever go back and get rid of the equipment.
And Richard, I'm just asking, have we ever thought about, and maybe we have thought about it, but Lark has their big cardboard their recycling program as well. Is it any benefit with us to allow them? Is it any benefit to the city, like tax purposes, whatever? And then I'm just
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
You know, they're
Yeah,
big
Right.
recycling cardboard. I mean, is there any
so for us to take to them or them to take?
for us to take to them? I mean, I know we're doing well, I'm just asking a general question, that's all.
I want to, the mayor can probably answer this better, but if you go look at their site,
It's a mess.
yes. I mean, I don't think they can keep
So
up
it's
with
getting
it
a little
anymore.
worse, their baler is broken.
Okay.
So they're desperately searching for another $80-something thousand
Bingo.
baler. And they sell a different class of cardboard. Their cardboard is graded much higher than ours. Ours is considered contaminated at times because of what's offered. So they're getting probably double the price per bale, and it's about a $700,000 line item revenue generator for LARC annually. We just paid $89,000 just for baling wire in a shipping container so we could stay ahead of the rising cost.
Well, that's where I was at, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question,
Yeah, it is. I did it as subtly as I can because I'm never going to do anything to hurt that organization. Subtly as I can, said, get that yard cleaned up.
Yeah, because I'm asking for donations for them.
I mean, I'm just wondering if, you know, if it.
Yeah, that's a great thought.
Yeah, no, it is.
Just drive over the overpass.
It is. Cardboard's the only moneymaker in recycling right now. The only demand at any level in the market is cardboard right now. And they'll actually fill that entire warehouse with their bales and wait for the
Right.
price to go up, wait for the market to go up, and then order as many trucks as they can to ship it out. It's a great organization, and every one of them are their consumers, their clients. There's not a single, Nearing Adams oversees it, and every one of them's the consumers of bales and works that lot.
All right, water sewer fund. Here's the water side of the fund. An idea of the classifications of expenditures. Once again, not much of a change there in that area. Here's our manning chart. This is where we are asking for an additional crew leader in our water area. This crew leader is needed because, you know, we've got antiquated infrastructure, and David's really doing a great job of trying to locate the valves that we may not know are there or can't find. So this person can be that person, the crew leader that manages that team along with FOG and some other areas that will help us meet some of our EPD requirements. So that's the new request for that crew leader. We found out how important those water valves were Friday down on Hero Street, right, Mr. Frost? Holiday Street, Florida. Yeah. So it's. I encourage you to give that some thought. That crew leader position, it would be great. It was. Yeah.
So the question about the meter readers, I thought when we got the new meters, that it would eliminate needing 11 meter readers because they'll be in the truck riding.
Right. These are still people that are reading the data coming in. We still have to work on the meters.
Okay.
So that's what that's all about. Again, no one lost a job there either. We did not let technology lose a job. Their function's just going to be rearranged.
Talking about the meters and stuff, how are we doing on putting them in?
Are we?
The program done?
Is it completed?
We're done with the residential, we're mostly done with the
Commercial.
We still have a few of the extra large meters to put in. And we are troubleshooting some of the influence, which is the mushroom little thing sticking out of it.
Is that the Bluetooth part?
That's what transmits.
The tracking or?
It transmits.
Right. And everything's working out, because I know initially when we started putting those things in, we had a lot of
Sticker
Well, we really didn't have as much for 22,000 meters that we're putting in. We had a handful in just certain areas of issues. I mean, we didn't have a citywide issue Councilman Carroll, he had a subdivision, and then really when we got through the problem, some of it was not the meter itself, it's just the meter was reading accurate now, and so if you're getting by with a low meter reading or no meter reading at all of a sudden you had a reading, because this thing tracks you know exactly when the water's on at people's houses, and so, but yes, we did have kinks, but it was not, it was not awful.
Yeah, y'all jumped on it. I mean,
It was not awful, and then we figured out what Chuck was just, we figured out what it was, and they came in and got it replaced, so we now know what to look for ourselves and don't have to depend on them. Now, one thing I don't think is still working is I don't think we're still working on the software to do some of the cool things you can do at your house with monitoring and looking, right, Chuck?
Online?
The online
Not
stuff.
open yet, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're not, we're getting some new
I'm getting some
software to do that,
They're
right?
ready for that thing to be up.
Yeah, we're gonna get some new software because what we were working with was not working, so y'all can do the cool things on.
Well, I mean, I know for I mean, prior to the new device, I was around the same amount that I'm kind of sort of at now still. I mean, it didn't really fluctuate that much for me.
If everything was working right on your meter before, there really wasn't much issue, but if you had an old meter that maybe was not meeting your irrigation, and all of a sudden now it's meeting your irrigation, your bill's going up. Yeah. Just like humans, just like.
Well, that's why I was explaining to some of the customers that were kind of upset when they said, I was normally paying, $90 a month, and now I'm paying $160 a month, and I'm like, well, you probably were getting some extra water on the on the house. Yeah, it does.
And they might have got a leak in the bathroom. And our old meters in my neighborhood, when we put them out, our water bill went up, but when they came out, there was basically leaks in the bathroom that you didn't really pay attention to.
All right, that's right. That's a great point, Councilwoman, that it was. And again, once we get all the software where it needs to be, it'll alert you to that if you sign up for that. You'll know when a leak starts.
And it'll show you how much water you're using, how much
It'll
you
alert.
flush that stool, it tells you how much water.
And it'll alert customer service as well.
I learned
So,
that because I live in that older system.
They can see it in the office across the street.
Right.
yeah. So once we get that set, it's really going to be good.
Because they showed Jeanette Cootie, and I was in there with her. I know, yes.
All right, there's the manning chart. We just talked about that, the additional crew leader, and why that's really important for David's group. Sewer department. We also asked for an environmental tech, as I mentioned earlier. And again, as we talked about the lab, the portable sample, as you were asking about earlier, Councilwoman, we're doing a lot more testing than we have done in the past, and we've never increased the amount of personnel we have doing the analysis in the lab. So it's a very needed position to continue on to meet our EPD requirements. Then past that, that's about it in that area. It's a continuation budget. There's the financial plan for the whole combination of water sewer. You can see it's still a healthy fund with an estimated fund balance as everything happens like it should. We'll be at $165.3 million fund balance by the end of this year. This is just a more detailed breakout of the revenue side of water and sewer. Sewer income is always going to be greater than water income by the way it's calculated. But this year it's $22.566 million is what we're expecting with the rate increase we talked about earlier. Then we have miscellaneous income. So we have miscellaneous income. It's just things that come in as again, you see that $1,935,000 in there, that's for the water plant, that comes in again. Then you see, the interest contributions, donations. If you go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation about contributed capital, that's the majority of that $11.9 million there. Inspection fund, again, I always talk about this. This is one of our, Rick Mefford and his group have done a fantastic job with reducing the amount of personnel, using technology like it should be. But again, no one lost a job during this, but as they retired, we just didn't refill that position. This was in a awful financial shape a few years back. Rick's taken it and got him out of that hole. And that financial statement there shows that financial statement there shows kind of where we're starting. We are to a point, I will tell you, in the fund balance area, that we probably need to look at. We can maybe take a year. What Rick and I've talked about is maybe reducing pricing to kind of get that, because we feel comfortable about a $1.4 million fund balance. But again, in these times we're in, this fund balance one year went from $1.6 million fund balance to a negative $500,000 fund balance in a year, and it kept going deeper in the hole. So we're about a $1.6 million deficit, and that's how successful Rick and the group has been bringing it back. So it's one of those fine line deals. We don't need the fund balance to grow that large, but we're afraid to maybe go 12 months with a price reduction just because of the uncertainty of the economy. But that's something that we are looking at to do to kind of get that fund balance back to a 1.3 level.
Any further conversation with the county on their plans?
No one has spoken to me from the county as of yet about any change in the inspection department. Next slide is the revenue. Total revenue of $1,415,000. As you can see, the majority of that, of course, is the license and the permitting. And then as you go through the remainder of these slides, we break it down: city electrical, county electrical, higher electrical. We kind of break it down, county electrical, so you can kind of see what that revenue input is for each of the areas: electrical, plumbing, building, mechanical. We have it for all the different entities, so we can always compare that revenue to, when we pass this information along to those different organizations as well, so they know what their annual fees are. Now, when we look at it, we talked about $1.3 million coming in and all this type of thing, and perhaps folks think this is some kind of cash infusion for the city of Valdosta. When Chuck does the numbers, it might be a positive cash inflow of about $25,000. So again, revenue and expenditures are not cash, so definitely not a cash infusion. As we all know, the $1.7 million is not cash sitting in a bank. The majority of that is the assets of that fund. So then we have $66,000 for plan reviews. Our plan review team continues to do a good job. Most plans are in and out well under the 10-day period that we've got kind of a goal for us to be in and out in 10 days. Folks coming into town, we continue to get rave reviews from them. The new car wash on Perimeter is just a good example. The owner there has nothing but praises for our inspection department, specifically Robert Singletary, our newest inspector. The out-of-town folks really do appreciate what we do. Not saying the in-town folks don't, but sometimes they get a little spoiled in town, and that's okay, because that's what we want to do for them and make their life a little easier. Stormwater. 17 folks, and we're maintaining 17 folks. As we talked about earlier, we've kind of upped the contract on some third-party deals with them to try to make sure we're hitting our maintenance schedule a little more regularly. Angela does a great job of that. She's restructured that over the last couple of years between to hit that fine line of third partying than what we do in-house, and it's tough to keep up with that, but she's doing a good job with that, and we'll continue to look at ways to make sure, we're hitting all of our waterways on a timely basis. There's the financial plan. Again, a healthy fund. And the reason you see let's say go to the last column and the recommended, you see $432,835. That's because the way this fund was designed, it really wasn't designed for revenue production, even though the state of Georgia makes us listed as enterprise fund. So you can see they started out with a $3.7 million fund balance in FY21. They don't need that large of a fund balance, so we're purposely budgeting a deficit to eat into that fund balance and to reduce that. So that what you see there is on purpose, intentional, to reduce that fund balance. And you can see we did that last year as well. That's why it's kind of, so between last year's budget and this year, we're a little over $800,000 of reducing that fund balance. Department of Labor, as you all know, we rent that building in the state of Georgia. They have decided to continue to lease from us. We have never, in 20 years, we have not raised the rate once, but next year you'll probably see me before you asking for a rental rate increase. And again, you see the deficit there. It's because, as I've talked about several times tonight, we do that intentionally to reduce the fund balance of that fund as well through a operating transfer to the city, this general fund. Auditorium, we've talked about that. Fund, there's the expense of that. We always have, there's the revenue side. Amy, is the revenue side in here? Usually revenues are a little less than $50,000, so we have to subsidize, Mathis, about $367,000 if I remember right, which comes from accommodations tax. So there's nothing different with that. Yes. Yes. Did it, or did it end? Is it in this year? And I think it's done. We finished this year, didn't we? Department of Labor, because they gave us a letter saying they want to continue. Because at the end of everything, they had a choice of continuing or purchasing the building. Yes, that the end of all of that. It was. That was what we had to. They had to decide at the end of the bond issue we did. And that's been a very good project for us. Yeah. Well, we paid, well, not really. No,
Not really.
That's, I heard what you said. It won't work. A good thought, but it won't work that way. Motor fuel. And this is just where we service other organizations, Coastal Plains EOA, school board, things of that nature. And we up the per gallon price about 6 cents. So we still doing 6 cents a gallon, Chuck? Or 6?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we don't try to gouge it. We just try to, because it behooves us to have them using it so we can, take advantage of the economies of scale so we can order more, so we don't try to overcharge anybody for that. So you can see we make a little bit of money. We've accumulated a little bit of fund balance, so that's why you see the deficit there. We're going to just transfer a little bit of that over to the general fund. Our internal service areas, our motor pool, that's our fleet maintenance. Motor pool owns all the assets, all the vehicles of the city of Valdosta. No department owns their own, so everything is generated right here. You can see where they get their revenues from. That 425 goes back to what we saw a while ago. Vehicle services is, of course, what they charge all the departments for preventive maintenance, for fuel. All of that, all of those charges come and are charged back to each department via this system here. So that's $5,000,001. And you can see the difference. Last year we did the $5,441,000. So as we're getting the newer vehicles on, this is where it shows where it's less cost to maintain the newer vehicles than the older vehicles, which again is always good. Like I just said, this is cost is distributed throughout the city, so that's less of a budget that we have to worry about in each department. So we have 15 folks in the garage, and they really do a really wonderful job. The summary of expenditures, not a big change with that. We did up a little bit for some fuel, but the way we do it on average, we think we're going to be okay. So that's motor pool, and we break them even, whatever it takes to break it. If they have a profit at the end of the month, Chuck's folks distribute that profit to everybody. If they have a loss, he distributes that as well, just to keep that fund broken even. I guess it's each month. I don't know if that's how you still do it, but that's how I used to do it. I did it every month. I don't know what Mr. Dinkins has chosen to do. So, biannual. Chuck does it biannual. Group insurance is our other fund, our other internal service fund. And we talked about this earlier. This is where all of our medical, dental claims are paid. This is where we collect our premiums. It's going to be a tough year if everything is panning out like it looks like it might for us. I will say, we're going through a new insurance broker that you guys are approved 2 years ago. They're doing a wonderful job of trying to find us cost savings and prescriptions and things of this nature. So, we're going to depend heavily on them for their services on that type of thing. But there's the revenues. And out of that, you see the employee/employee premiums, $4,815,480. Under $100,000, I believe, if I remember right, Chuck, comes from employees. It's the majority of that is what the city pays in on behalf of the employee. And remember earlier I talked about we break this fund even. So you see at the very operating transfers, $3,511,000. That's what the departments have to give to this fund to even make it break zero. So it's kind of tough when but it's a great program, but it's a very expensive plan to maintain.
So we have how many employees?
50. Well, that's how many positions we got, but not everybody's on insurance.
How many we got on insurance?
Catherine, how many we have on insurance?
That's 400, and this 400 pay about 100,000 into this 4.8.
Well, if you're on, like if you're just on your own, it's $27 a pay period. If you have a family, the most you're gonna pay for a large family is $115. $115. And we have maintained these premiums for many years because when you're trying to fill a gap of, let's say, the $3.5 million, I mean, you can't do that to them. You can't put all that burden on the employees' back. So we're just trying to make it. It's difficult.
I have no issues with it. I know.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It is. I mean, that's what it's. A few years back when we first started seeing this our insurance fund hemorrhage a little bit, I got with GMA and asked them to do a study to say if we were not self-funded and we had the same benefit package that we have for our employees, what would it be like in a Blue Cross Blue Shield world or something like that? And it was like $672 a pay period, if I remember right, for single coverage. Family went well beyond that. So we knew we couldn't do that to our employees. So, but and it's one of these things too that kind of runs in cycles. Sometimes those years are much better than others. But we've talked about this before. We have an aging workforce really in our that hang on here because we offer retiree benefits. The retirees are part of this as well. So we continue to have high medical claims. Now, we do have, the spec claims when they hit a certain amount, but that amount's fairly high, so
We've hit that before, though.
we have hit that several times.
Yeah.
I would just say, last couple of years, we haven't approached it, but the clinic, so just imagine without the clinic, if we had all the people that go to the clinic, our clinic is over, the utilization rate is 100 to 102%. So, and so the majority of these folks that are going there would have been sitting in the emergency room. So this would have been higher. So it's an expensive benefit, but again, we know we don't put a lot of jingle in your pocket with your paycheck, so we want to get the quality folks with our benefits.
Well, and I think, too, the city does a great job with ELAP, which helps control a lot of the costs that we're dealing with, and costs that could be shifted back to the employee. ELAP's doing a great job for both the employee and the city.
They do, but like with anything, it shines for a moment, and then it kind of gets a little dull, and that's kind of where we are with that right now. We will probably be exploring a new way to do things fairly shortly as well.
I mean, the hospitals will figure out how to game that system?
That's exactly right, Councilman. They have figured out how to take care of that situation. So still a great benefit, absolutely. They do a great job negotiating for us, but we all agree we're going to have to change one more time, which is the world of insurance. That's how it goes. Workers' comp. You can see there's a deficit there, and that's just simply because we've built up a fund balance in there as well, that we transfer some of that to the general fund. Our numbers do creep up, if you can see, last year's budget compared to this one. We've had some incidents that have been high paying out incidents, but we do have an excess claim on that too. Once it reaches a certain amount, that insurance company takes it and pays it from there. So that's why you kind of see the difference between last year and this year. For the most part, with an organization this large, we do very well on workers' comp accidents. Catherine and her group do a wonderful job with the risk management side, preaching safety and doing the classes, and we partner with GERMA, and then GERMA and Catherine's group get together and they collaborate. So we do a good job with that because, really, you come to your job every day, and some of the jobs here, just a little slip can really be a bad accident. So, and you forget about it. So you need these training classes regularly to keep safety in the forefront of your mind. So I think that's another reason we see a lot of this reducing. But again, for our organization, actually, those insurance companies with the excess coverage can't believe our numbers when they see them. So knock on wood with that again too. I hope it remains that way. Information technology, we've talked about this fund. As you know, everything is dumped in this fund that has to do anything with technology. And then Chuck's group gets in and they prorate it out based on usage and all the magic Chuck does with his Excel spreadsheets. And once again, for an organization our size, $1.7 million for computers, technology, phones, everything else that falls in that category is really good. Yeah. So, and again, that gets prorated out. We just break that even zero every year. There's no reason for it to make profit. The cemetery fund, we've talked about some, Councilwoman. You can see where that is. And that takes back to where we started the city's financial plan. I know it's a lot of numbers, but there's no other way to tell it to you without a lot of numbers. So between now and adoption, I'd get with anybody that wants to get with me, ask questions. Any questions tonight while it's fresh in your mind, we're good because we made really good time with this, so.
Well,
Any
you spoke
questions?
fast and we listened fast.
So, again, thank you. Always thank you for your support, the things that you support us with, and I will be looking forward for any questions you may have, but we'll present this, especially if there's any changes that you guys think you'd like to make to some of the new items we added to the budget this year. I'll need to know that so Amy can make the changes before the adoption, our next meeting.
Well,
So,
thank you, Amy. Thank you, Carolyn. I guess thank you, Chuck, even though your part of that effort was a piece of cake compared to theirs.
Just admin.
But thank you both for, again, just doing such a great job and making Chuck and Mark look good.
Oh, to-go plates are out there. I forgot the most important part, there's to-go plates if you want one out there to take home with you. All right?
Council,
Thank y'all.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ah.
Aye, aye, aye.
That was my